Defensa, Centro de Formación y Capacitación de los países miembros de la Junta Interamericana. Damas y caballeros, audiencia en general que nos
Ladies
acompaña.
and gentlemen,
Ladies and gentlemen,
guests accompanying us in the virtual channels, good morning. I'm the captain of the Joint Staff, Jesus Andrade, of the Armed Forces of Ecuador. I am the coordinator of this conference on environmental protection, organized by the Cooperation and Disasters Division of the Inter-American Defense Board. The objective is to present important information that is transcendental and relevant from different perspectives of how we are contributing with the armed forces of the region with the different capacities in order to protect the environment. And with this, we want to build a projection for the future years that will enable the participants to be more knowledgeable and aware of the current challenges, the case studies and lessons learned in this fundamental area of life. I would like to highlight the importance of joint action to take care of our planet. We also want to highlight the will, the commitment, and the importance that each country has that are part of our Inter-American Defense Board and our participation in the development of this meeting. With more than 5,000 attendees in more than 35 countries, we would now like to introduce to all of you our moderator who will be accompanying us today in this conference, Mr. Colonel of the Peruvian Army, Jose Carlos Diaz Torres. Currently, he is the Chief of Division or the Major General of Civil and Institutional Support of the Inter-American Defense Board before he was a military observer of the United Nations in Southern Sudan, where he was chief of the Federal International Operations Center. He is a magister in business administration with management board by Piura University and a master's degree in decision making by the postgraduate school of the Army of Peru. Likewise, he graduated from the PhD of public policies and state management and the master's degree in geopolitics and strategy in the PhD School of the University of Peru. With no further ado, now with you, Major General Jose Diaz Torres, moderator for this third conference on environmental protection. The floor is yours, Major General. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and on behalf of the Inter-American Defense Board, it's a pleasure to give you the warmest welcome into this third conference on environmental protection. We would like to appreciate and say thank you to the armed forces of all the region, different specialized organizations and colleges to go deep into a topic that demands of our attention and further commitment, which is environmental protection. This is a pillar on hemispheric security in order to tackle the effects of climate change, deforestation, illegal mining, as well as contamination of our ecosystems, not only threat biodiversity, also stability, economy, and the well-being of our populations. Before this scenario, the cooperation amongst nations and the support of the armed forces become key through its own capacity building, discipline, and technology can contribute to prevention, mitigation, and preparedness facing these environmental threats. These are my welcoming
recording
remarks.
in progress.
In this regard, we would like to listen to the welcoming remarks by our Major General Reynaldo Beato, who is the General Director of the Inter-American Defense Board, who will now deliver his opening remarks. The floor is yours, Major General.
Senhora Embaixadora do Equador ante a já nominada, distintos expositores, convidados especiais, senhoras e
dear
senhores.
presenters, special guests, ladies and gentlemen. For me, it's a great honor to give you the warmest welcoming on behalf of the Inter-American Defense Board, the third protection on environmental protection, that today it's on how armies or armed forces of the region with its military capacity can contribute for environmental protection. We live in current times where environmental challenges are not only technical matters or scientific issues, they have become security topics and survival issues. Climate change, the indiscriminated use of resources, the degradation and depletion of ecosystems directly affect the stability of our societies. Before this scenario, the armed forces are not only guaranteeing the sovereignty to defend our nations, but also become key stakeholders and strategic partners to offer complete solutions for the protection of our environment. This third conference, therefore, is a space of insight and reflection, as well as experience sharing that will enable to articulate and coordinate visions and synergies, and to also project joint actions towards sustainable development. It's an honor to have the participation of experts in the subject matters, officials, and expert matters in the subject that will contribute from this topic. From Brazil, we will hear from the Brazilian Navy throughout their program of development of submarines. The Army of Colombia, represented by Brigadier General Salcedo, will show us the contribution of their army, and Wilder Alejandro Santos, advisor of the Strategic Studies Center at an international level, headquartered in Washington, will talk about the army and the role they have against illegal fishing. The Army of Peru, presented by Colonel Luis Rodriguez, will present the Peruvian operations against illegal mining, as well as the Army of Ecuador with Captain Rodriguez. He will discuss the revision and the management of pollution in the different aquatic spaces. Also, we have our Navy captain from Peru will talk about hemispheric security. Also, General Salinas will present the different possibilities of remote employment for security, and our presenter from Italy will share experiences of the Italian police. And I'm sure that the contribution of each one of the presenters will be valuable, and we will have the insight that environmental protection, it's also supervising and protecting the future of our nations. I wish you a valuable and successful meeting in this sharing of experiences. We now officially declare open this third conference on environmental protection. Thank you so much for your remarks that inspire us and restate our commitment as the Inter-American Defense Board towards the environmental protection and the cooperation amongst our nations. This is the official opening. And next, we have the honor of listening to Dr. Monica Rosa Irene Palencia Núñez, who currently is the extraordinary ambassador and plenipotentiary ambassador before the OAS. She's doctor in legal sciences, a diplomat, and an academic with a solid trajectory in criminal law, public policy. She has a master's degree in international relationships, specialist in criminal economic law. She has a technical degree in criminology. She's also an attorney at law in political sciences. She's leaded security and justice strategies with a hemispheric approach, acknowledged by his academic excellency and institutional leadership. She will now lead some opening remarks to our third conference on environmental protection. We've heard from the general tell us in short that the degradation of ecosystems deeply affect the security of our society. I would like to address the Major General Reinaldo Beato, General Director of the Inter-American Defense Board. Thank you for this invitation and for your remarks, and thank you for your message that has a hemispheric transcendence. Brigadier General Eduardo Villegas Velázquez, Vice President of the Delegate Council of the Inter-American Development Board. Respected members of the Inter-American Defense Board, presenters of the different republics from Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, United States, Italy, Peru, as well as from the Inter-American Defense Board and your Inter-American Defense College. States that participate virtually and remotely, and others are on site. Welcome and good morning. Warm greetings from the city of Washington, from the state of Washington, in my capacity of permanent representative of the Republic of Ecuador before the Organization of American States, and today in the wonderful office and in the headquarters of the Inter-American Defense Board that based this trajectory not only in the beauty of the building where we're located at, but also in the history of its work, in the transcendence, meaning, and sense of its daily activities. Please allow me to introduce and greet all of the audience that is connected by virtual means and on site of our boards. And thank you for the opportunity of delivering such welcoming remarks in this highly relevant third conference on environmental protection. Our continent, it's a privileged region for its abundance of its incomparable natural resources. Preserving our environment becomes fundamental, not only for the health and prosperity of people and our citizens, but also to preserve the unique beauty of our regions. Therefore, I applaud the initiative of this Inter-American Defense Board, which is the planning of the third conference on environmental protection, to continue our joint and regional mission to promote and strengthen the trust of hemispheric defense and safety. And this is the opportunity to share knowledge as well as exchange or sharing of best practices, experiences, aimed to broaden everything we do throughout the continent by contributing to the regional actions. The degradation of ecosystems affects security. Yes, of course, the security of our civil society, likewise, the democratic stability, but mainly it commits the life itself. And I want to highlight this expression that degradation of ecosystems compromises life itself. Therefore, I applaud the interesting topics to be dealt with in such conference. And I want to highlight especially that we need to move towards a culture of integration for hemispheric security, where we can see attacks to our ecosystem as a main threat to our own life and to our stability, and that we react with the pertinent priority it requires. So congratulations to the board, because you're working on cooperation against catastrophes or natural disasters, and soon you will present a very interesting program in this regard, because only from the culture of integration and only by knowing specifically and practically what to do in the different situations, only then we are going to be able to together face the future. Why? Because the change is nothing else but the future and how the future invades our life. And in this regard, we need to keep the absolute control. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ambassador Mónica Palencia, for your remarks that officially open this third conference on environmental protection and also inspire us to move forward in this academic program. In today's program, we will have presentations that invite us to reflect on different dimensions in this common challenge. Let us remind all participants that you will be able to post your comments and questions to the email addresses that you see on screen. Any consultation or questions you can transfer to our presenters and they will answer them at the end of their interventions. With this, we officially open the presentations. First, spokesperson, Republic of Brazil. To begin with the academic program, we present our Rear Admiral Rogério Caldeira Rosas. He will mention how the Brazilian Marine is contributing to environmental protection during the development of the program PROSUA. Currently, our spokesperson is the manager of the modular project for the infrastructure for the obtention of naval or navy industrial infrastructure. In the Brigade of Brazil, he was the commander of Araminas Baratu. He was also in the Institutional Security Cabinet and in the Vice Presidency of the Republic as the Rear Admiral. He was the advisor and personal advisor of the Navy captain. He was the representative of Brazil before the Inter-American Defense Board and the Inter-American Defense College. He was the director of the Social Division and commander of the surface forces as well as the civil works of the Navy. He has a master's degree on Inter-American Security in the Inter-American Defense College in Washington, D.C. Now, Rear Admiral, we give you the floor. Almirante Bastos, the floor is yours.
Bom dia, senhoras e senhores. Para a Marinha do Brasil é uma honra.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. For the Brazilian Navy, it's a pleasure to participate in such important conference. Particularly, I feel honored to present to all of you what we do with our program of obtention of Navy infrastructure or submarines.
Pergunto se estão vendo a apresentação.
I would like to ask if you can see my screen.
Sí se ve, señor contraalmirante. Le solicitamos que lo coloque en modo presentación.
Yes, Rear Admiral, can you please put it in full view for us to see the presentation view, please? I hope you can see it. It's already it's not really in full mode of full view.
Agora?
Aún no, mi...
Not yet. Not yet.
Está?
Ahora sí, excelente.
Now we can see you. You can continue your presentation, Rear Admiral Bastos. Yes, let me explain how the Brazilian Marine is contributing for environmental protection during the development of our program of submarine obtention. I will follow this agenda. I will do a brief introduction on our program. I will discuss how we organize environmental management throughout the construction process. I will explain the environmental liabilities that we found during the construction site in our endeavors. I'm going to talk about the different vegetation suppressions and compensations that have been undertaken. Also, I will discuss the environmental monitoring that we do at the very beginning of the program and the socio-environmental legacy that we are now inheriting to our region. As an introduction, I know many don't know exactly where our program is located at. It is in the state of Rio de Janeiro. And I'm showing you a picture of Rio. For you to know the region, this is the location of the city of Rio de Janeiro next to the Bay of Guanabana. It's on the other side of the bay, and on the other side of the city of Rio de Janeiro, we have the city of Itaguaí. This is where our Navy base is located at. And this is in an island called Madeira Island. That island of La Madeira, it's an island that now is connected to the peninsula, is connected to inland, and this is where our Navy base is located at. There's a program on submarine development that's coordinated by the General Coordination Unit of the Nuclear Propulsion Submarine Development Program, known as COGESN, COGESN for its Spanish or Portuguese acronyms, and it has 4 conventional submarines. And we have 1 nuclear submarine that has been also assembled conventionally. We have a strategic partnership with the government of France. We have shared updated knowledge on submarine building once the Brazilian Marine had already built submarines in the past, in the decade of the 80s as well as in the 90s. This strategic partnership with France does not involve the nuclear aspect of the submarine, that is of exclusive development of the Brazilian Navy. To continue with the construction, we needed Navy industrial infrastructure to be set up for the construction, operation, and management, as well as maintenance of the new means of transportation. The program currently has already delivered in 2022 the submarine called Riachuelo, in 2024 the submarine called Comeica, and now in November we will deliver the submarine called Tonelero, or a submarine Carano will be also delivered very soon. We are currently complying with the rating of the nuclear type of submarine, which is the latest objective of our program. Now, regarding the environmental management controls that we have in place, Brazil has a national institute called the Brazilian Institute of the Environment and of Renewable Resources, IBAMA. This basically sets standards, it provides oversight, and provides guidelines as well for the best management and compliance with environmental standards. We have a structure from the Brazilian Navy within COGES, which is our adjunct management of environmental permits. We work together with the construction companies and the environmental management division. We also work with environmental consultancy companies that provide advisory and that they're hired for specific actions in order to guarantee environmental stability in the region. From the very beginning of our program, we have established a basic environmental plan. This was based upon a study, an environmental impact study with 12 different volumes, meaning very complete and thorough, approved by IBAMA at the beginning of the program in 2009, including 5 programs, 46 projects, and broadly applied throughout these years of construction. Now, let's talk about the pre-existing environmental liabilities. This is the area of La Madeira Island, where we have the headquarters of the Navy base. It has a northern area and a south area. For the building of the southern area, we were required to construct further infrastructure, but in the decades of the 90s, in the yellow region, there was a mining company called Inga, or known as Inga. That mining company went bankrupt in the 90s and abandoned the site. And now the region was left abandoned without further maintenance. This region, due to constant rains coming from Rio de Janeiro, are now permeable, and they contaminated the region surrounding the island of La Madeira. This contamination of heavy metals had to be identified, and the Navy of Brazil considered an obligation to remove such hazardous material in an area where there was no marine life or sea life. So we identified the heavy metals surrounding the constructions. These heavy materials were dredged and removed to an area where they were disposed of, and they were located in geotubes or pipes. These materials, it's solidified now, and with this dredging and these pipelines, we have a region that is free of heavy metals and is totally cleaned up. These works required around 8,007,000 cubic meters, meaning we removed 87,000 cubic meters of sediments, and more than 300,000 were contaminated and were located or they were disposed of in these geo pipes. The non-contaminant was treated as normal dredging material in ports, and it was delivered by IBAMA, and it was disposed by this authority in a safe way. Talking about the compensations and vegetative suppressors for these areas that were originally destined or used by fishermen, it was solely for fishing. Some vegetable or some type of plants were brought. There was a tunnel that was built. We can see in 2009 how this area looked like without vegetation. There was already a farm in the region, some fishermen. And in 2014, with the opening of the tunnel connecting both areas, and in 2025, you can see how it looks like. It's 218,000 square meters as a total surface area. In the southern area, there was a beach area. There was no vegetation here, so it was necessary to carry out some interventions to build and to repopulate it. This is a picture of 2025, and you can see the future picture or the projection for 2030 is going to be 651,000 square meters for this area. We require the suppression of 5,365 square meters in this area. Next, we did compensatory cropping or harvesting in the region of Miguel Pereira. These regions were designated, and out of 86,000 square meters, we did the compensation of 85.4 thousand square meters, so 85,400 square meters, excuse me. And you can see the before and after in 2012 and in 2024, how the vegetation looks like. We've done a lot of work in reforestation with different works and actions carried out with specific areas to be able to compensate the vegetation suppression. These areas in blue are the compensated areas by our program. Regarding the environmental assessment or environmental monitoring that we carry out, as of the beginning of the program, also the Navy has institutes for specializing on ocean studies. We have one in Arrabal del Cabo, Rio de Janeiro, that has a lot of possibilities to do studies in biology. And we are getting support in their environmental assessments for the aquatic biota in the ocean, meaning in water life, in sea life, and our fauna as well. And with regards to monitoring, they also help us monitoring the maritime currents provoked or caused by our man actions. Also, it has some water monitoring, water quality monitoring. They also undertake the monitoring of radionuclides in water and in fish that are collected and are sampled to have a parameter on the situation of radionuclides before and after the operations of our submarines. This collection or sampling is not limited to the surrounding areas from our station. It's not only the surrounding areas, but also throughout the Brazilian coast in order to have parameters to compare when our nuclear submarine is under operations. We want to have enough evaluation and sampling. We also have two meteorological towers, and a fourth one is going to be built in the future. These towers is to have all the information that we need from the climate and to do specialized maintenance as well, in order to also do specialized maintenance on the nuclear submarines. Apart from the AAPM, we have other organizations supporting a noise monitoring to see the interactions taking place during the construction process in the surrounding communities, like anthropic noise that can affect mainly the wildlife of this specific fish called potocris that is located in the Madeira Island, especially during the dredging activities and the monitoring of the water quality when the works are carried out.
So we have residue management or waste management, which are destined to reutilization, recycling, and a recovery of materials. And all of this is done based on characterization of waste, separation, and transport to the final destination, keeping a constant registry. Regarding effluents, we have 5 units for waste treatment. This unit is in the Madeira Island. This unit has been installed this year and it's in operation already. And for the social environmental legacy that we are leaving in the area, with the removal of contaminated part. This was the end of the Inga nightmare, because for many years the region did not have life. Fauna and flora have come back. So it's known as the turtles miracle. Turtles came back to the environment, and we can see different species of fish, rays, and turtles. In the social area, we have a program, Believe Young Apprentice, that trains people in the construction program of the basin for the construction of submarines. There was a promotion of courses for the Navy part. This is for fishing, creating courses of auxiliary sailor for the farmers of the region. A cooperative was created for family farmers of the region, so that they can improve production and environmental awareness in the production of food. This food in these pictures that you see, they can be consumed by the military and operations staff that work in the construction of the submarines and the base. The program Technologic Hub in the Sepetiba Bay have been organized to improve the quality of local companies in a way that they have the capacity to produce materials to be used in the
Bom,
construction.
como último slide,
In
para
construction.
frisar
And the
que
last
com inovação,
slide
crescimento
to
econômico
emphasize
e
that with
responsabilidade
innovation,
ambiental,
economic growth,
ProSul
and
consolida-se
environmental
como
responsibility,
objetivo estratégico do
ProSul is
desenvolvimento
consolidated
tecnológico no
as a
Brasil.
strategic actor in the technological development
Obrigado a
of
todos aí
Brazil.
pela oportunidade. Mais uma
Thank
vez.
you, everyone, for the opportunity.
Agradecemos al contraalmirante Bastos
We
por su
thank
valiosa intervención que nos
Counter-Almirant
permite
for
dimensionar
his
cómo las fuerzas navales
intervention
contribuyen al resguardo de los
that
espacios
allow us to
marítimos y
see
la
how
preservación de los
the
recursos naturales.
Navy
Segundo
help us
conferencista,
in the preservation of
República de
natural
Colombia.
resources. Second speaker,
Seguidamente,
Republic of
presentamos al
Colombia.
brigadier general
We present
Ricardo
General
Roque
Brigadier
Salcedo,
Ricardo
del
Roque
Ejército
Salcedo
Nacional de Colombia,
from the National Colombian Army.
actualmente comandante del
Currently,
Comando de Ingenieros.
he is the commander
Su
of the
formación
Engineers
académica y profesional
Command.
se ha consolidado
His
en el ámbito
education
militar e
has been
ingenieril,
consolidated in the
siendo
military and
profesional en ciencias
engineering area.
militares
He
e
is a
ingeniería
professional in
militar,
military sciences
complementada
and
con estudios de
military
ingeniería civil.
engineering, complemented with studies
Representa a su
of civil
institución
engineering.
como
He
presidente de
represents
la
his
Comisión
institution as
Técnica
a president
Permanente de
of the
Ingeniería
Technical
Militar
Permanent
ante la
Commission
Sociedad
of
Colombiana de
Military
Ingenieros.
Engineering in
Es
the
especialista en gerencia de
Colombian
obras
Engineer
y
Society.
en
He is
conducción de
specialist
unidades
in
militares.
works management and
Asimismo,
in
es
the
magíster en
conduction of
Relaciones y
military.
Negocios Internacionales y magíster en
He is a
Seguridad y Defensa Nacional
master
con
in
cursos
national
de altos estudios
defense
militares
security
en la
with
Escuela
high
de
military
Guerra
studies
del
in
Ejército de
the
Colombia.
War School of
Su
the
ponencia
Colombian
lleva por
Army.
título
His
Programa
presentation
de
is
Defensa
called
y Seguridad
Defense
Ambiental
Program
MUTIS.
and Environmental Security
El
Mutis.
brigadier general Ricardo Roque Salcedo,
Brigadier
le
General
cedemos el
Ricardo
uso de la
Roque
palabra.
Salcedo, the floor is yours.
¿Ya? Buenos días.
Morning.
Buenos días,
Muy
Miguel.
buenos días. Muy buenos días para todos los
Good morning
asistentes a este
to
importante
all
evento
people
académico
present
de
in
nuestra Junta
this
Interamericana de
important
Defensa
academic event
para las Fuerzas Militares de Colombia, para el Ejército
for
Nacional.
the
Es
Colombian
una gran
military
oportunidad
forces.
poder
Is
participar
a
en este
great
evento.
opportunity to
Tengo
participate in this
la
event.
experiencia personal de
I have the
pertenecido
personal
a
experience
este
of
gran equipo de
having
trabajo
belonged to
de
this
Estados Americanos,
great
allá como
team of the
oficial
Organization of American States when I was
agregado
an
Colombia ante
attaché
la
to
Organización de
the
Estados
Colombian
Americanos
Embassy in
y
the
sé
Organization
de
of
primera
American
mano
States, and
la
I
importancia
know
en el tema
about the
ambiente, de la seguridad
importance in terms
multidimensional
of
que se ha
environmental
avanzado en los
aspects
últimos
and
años
security
acá
in the
respecto
last years.
para el
This
día
is
de
with
hoy
regards
tengo
of the
una
environment.
agenda
For today, I have
marcada por 4 puntos
4 points of agenda
informando, dando conocimiento de nuestro plan de defensa y seguridad mutis.
informing about
Primero, el
our
marco
MUTIS
jurídico, una
plan,
estrategia
legal
de
framework,
personal profesional
a
nacional.
strategy of
¿En
professional
qué
staff
consiste
at
nuestro
national
programa de
level.
defensa y seguridad mutis?
Our
El Éxito
MUTIS
Nacional y la
program,
participación de los
what is
conferencistas
this about? And
de
the
la
participation of
conferencia de
conference
la
members in
COP16 el
the
año inmediatamente anterior.
conference of COP16
Vamos a
in
iniciar con
last
la
year.
proyección de las
I
ayudas.
will begin with the projection of our aids.
No sé si estén viendo las ayudas.
Se ve, mi general. Necesitamos que lo ponga en modo presentación, por favor.
Let's put it in presentation mode.
Ahí.
No, aún no, mi general. Todavía no está en modo presentación.
Ya, un momento, por favor. Bueno, solucionamos aquí problemas técnicos. Un saludo especial allá.
Mi
Para...
general, ya se ve la presentación. Por
Perfecto.
favor, le
Muchas
disculpe el
gracias.
inconveniente. Puede continuar, mi general, muy amable.
Antes que nada, un saludo especial para los señores generales, la señora
Greetings to
embajadora que participa
our
en la presente reunión, para todos los
generals, the
oficiales,
ambassador,
y un
and
fuerte
the
y
different
caluroso
officials.
abrazo para mi capitán Cruz, compañero por allá
And
del buque Gloria hace
one regards
muchos
to
años.
Captain Cruz.
Marco jurídico. Entonces, empezando con nuestra
The
agenda,
legal
en el
framework.
marco jurídico de nuestra
In the legal framework,
de el por qué empezamos a trabajar con el
and
tema
as to
de
why
medio
we
ambiente
started to work
como oficial de
in
ingenieros,
the
haciendo en el
environment.
año
And
92,
as
y el
an
tema del medio
engineering
ambiente
official,
empieza a tomar
I was
bastante
promoted in
relevancia,
92, and the environmental
siendo
subject
una de las
starts to
líneas
take relevance.
rojas
And
o esa
one of
ruta
the
crítica para el
red
desarrollo de los
lines or
diferentes
critical routes
desarrollos
for
y
development
proyectos en el
of
marco
the
de
different projects within the
los trabajos
framework
sociales y los trabajos de
of
infraestructura que adelantamos en
social
diferentes
work
partes
and
del país.
infrastructure work
Esto
that
va
we
paralelo
do in different parts
al
of the country. This is
desarrollo
parallelly to
jurídico
the
de
legal
nuestro querido
development
país Colombia.
of our
En el año
country, Colombia.
1993, la
In
ley 99 del
1993,
93
Law 99
prácticamente reordena el sector público
reorganizes
encargado de la
the
gestión y
public
conservación
sector
del medio ambiente
in
y los
charge of
recursos naturales y
preservation of the
renovables.
environment and
Esto ha tenido una
renewable and
evolución
natural
fundamental
resources. This has
y ha
had a fundamental
permitido
evolution and
que
has
esta
allowed
doctrina, a partir de ese
that this
momento, haga
doctrine
parte de las fuerzas militares de
is
Colombia,
part of the
como
military forces of Colombia
parte fundamental de
as a
la
fundamental
educación,
part
parte
of
fundamental de esa
education
capacitación que recibimos en las diferentes escuelas
and the
para
training
el
that we
desarrollo
receive
de
in
nuestra
different
misionería.
schools for development of our mission.
Esto a nivel del Ejército Nacional
In terms of the
fue
National Army,
encargado al Comando de Ingenieros del Ejército.
the
El
engineering
Comando de Ingenieros
command
recibe esa
was in
misión de
charge.
estructurar
They
todas las
received that
normas y
mission
políticas
of
a nivel
structuring
institucional de la
regulations
fuerza
and institutional
para
policies
para
of the
el manejo y
forces
la preservación del medio
for
ambiente.
management and
Es así
preservation of the
como esa
environment.
estrategia de despliegue de personal
So
profesional
this strategy of deployment
ha
of
permitido
professional staff
que desde
has
el orden
allowed
central
that
se
from central
irradie
order,
a las diferentes divisiones
we
y el Centro
irradiate to the
Nacional de
different
Entrenamiento
divisions and the
personal
National Training
profesional
Center
técnico especializado
from
que
technical
le
specialized
permite
professional
ser el
staff that
asesor de los
allow them to
diferentes
be
comandos
the
a
advisor
nivel
for the
regional
different commands
para el desarrollo de
at
las
a regional level
operaciones
for
y para el
development
desarrollo
of
de las
operations
actividades
and for development
administrativas
of
y logísticas
administrative and
propias de
logistical
cada región,
activities
de cada unidad. Por
of
eso en
every
cada
region and
división
unit.
nosotros
So
tenemos
in every division, we have
oficiales profesionales en medio ambiente
professional officials
que nos permiten y que le
in
permiten a ese
environmental aspects that
comandante de
allow
unidad
the unit commander
cumplir y alinearse con esa
to
ley
be aligned
99
to
93
this
y
Act
alinearse con las
9993
políticas
and
de
be
protección
aligned
del
with
medio ambiente.
the environmental
Es
protection
así
policies.
como en el desarrollo
That's
de nuestros
how,
diferentes
in the development of the different
políticas
plans
institucionales,
and
nuestro
institutional policies,
plan de campaña
our
contempla
campaign plan
dentro
contemplates
de nuestras políticas de seguridad y defensa
within our
programas de defensa y
security
seguridad mutua
policies the program for
marcados por el
defense
plan
called
Cucho, que es
MUTIS
el
in
campaña
the
vigente
Ayacucho
para las fuerzas militares de
campaign
Colombia,
plan, which is
con
the
tres ejes
current plan for
temáticos
the military
fundamentales.
forces of Colombia with
Un
three
eje
thematic
temático es la
pillars.
protección de
One
recursos
is
naturales.
protection of
Esa
natural
protección de
resources.
recursos naturales tiene unos
Is
variables
protection of natural
que son
resources have
operaciones
some
contra el
variables, which
narcotráfico,
are operations against
operaciones
drug
contra
trafficking,
la
operations
extracción ilícita de
against
yacimientos
illicit
mineros
extraction
y
of mining,
operaciones contra la tala de árboles.
and the
Esto
operations against
nos ha permitido
cutting
contribuir
trees.
a
These
la
allow
desestabilización
us
del sistema de la red del narcotráfico,
to destabilize
contribuir a la reducción de
drug
la
trafficking
explotación
networks,
ilícita de yacimientos
contribute
mineros
to
y
reduction of
de alguna
illegal
forma mitigar
exploitation of mines,
en gran
and
parte la tala
mitigate
ilegal de nuestros bosques y de
illegal
nuestras zonas
cutting of trees
protegidas en la parte
and
forestal.
protected forests.
El segundo eje temático
The
es el
second
desarrollo territorial.
thematic pillar is
Ese
territorial
desarrollo
development.
territorial
Is
tiene
territorial
tres
development
variables de alguna
has
forma.
three
Una
variables.
variable que es la contribución
One
a la
is
acción integral
contribution to comprehensive
mediante
action
el desarrollo de
through the development of infrastructure works and unify actions. This comprehensive action is done together with the different entities, public and private, from different regions. Consolidation works that we do in different parts of the country as construction engineers and risk management. We have a national risk management system, and we have the National Risk Management Unit and the military forces. They are part of this system. We are a fundamental tool that has been recognized at a regional level. The importance of the different military forces because of their logistics and communication capacities, their strategic deployment to support risk management and attention to emergencies and disasters. And this is in the second line of development, which is territorial development. The third one, in terms of environmental management, we have three variables. One is basic sanitation. This is reducing the impact and sanitary risks in the development of operations, wastewater treatment plants, to be in contact with entities that manage the environment and that allow that all administrative processes that the military forces do, that they are not against this environmental protection, environmental education internally by environmental managers and by the people in charge in the brigade at the battalion level of environmental management. This is fundamental, and it's geared towards the education of the members of the institution in the environmental tasks. In terms of environmental conservation in the units where they are working, Colombia has many regions and different environments in different regions. Every unit has an environmental area that is different. So every officials and soldiers in the institution carrying out defense activities and administrative activities in the different areas, it's important that they know about this environmental education. And a variable which is ecosystems, which is to contribute to the preservation of ecosystems through tasks that we will see, creation of greenhouses according to the native species of the regions that allow us to support the Ministry of the Environment with plants and species to replant the crops because of that we have to do it because of disasters of human actions, logging, illegal exploitation of mines. Within the examples that we have in this thematic axis number one, we have the results we have obtained in the last 2 years. These are the statistics. This has allowed for 588 arrests, recovery of 3,099 species of fauna that were being commercialized, recover 6,461 cubic meters of wood that has been cut, and this is employed for social benefit works later on. Chainsaws, heavy machinery used in the extraction of mining resources, machines that come to the different areas, and that it's important to seize or destroy this machinery, permanent support to environmental authorities through campaigns, of support and environmental education, and over 2,900,000 plants seed in the different areas of the country that allow us to support this effort of the environmental ministry. These non-armed efforts of the institutions of the military forces in the different units where we are working. Also in thematic axis 2, territorial development, there are some examples of the region where we have had an impact as an institution in the development of infrastructure that since year 93, the critical route of infrastructure development in these regions that are far away in the country is the environmental topic. This is a fundamental axis in planning and in the development of the different infrastructure works that the military engineer do in the different parts of the country. We don't pave and we don't do works in the big cities. It's in faraway areas, places of difficult access for communities, for traditional engineering because of security and logistics aspects. And this goes hand in hand because these areas have special environmental coverage. That's why with regional autonomous corporations in charge of regulating locally the environmental aspects, and also with the Ministry of the Environment and AMLA, which is the agency that issues environmental licenses, we work together with them and we can develop mitigation programs and compensation programs in the areas of the country, in the different areas of the country. In this territorial development, we work hand in hand in terms of environmental education. We have an impact in the different entities, especially in the children in schools. We explain in the importance of preserving the environment, preserving these water sources, and preserving native species of every region with greenhouses that we have in every command post, in the different engineering work. So we make strategic alliances with educational entities of the region so that we hit twice. We have a positive impact in the environment, and we generate this awareness and education in children about the importance of the preservation of the environment. Within the disaster risk management, we have risk mitigation actions. We are exposed to natural disasters and risks due to different reasons: fires, rains, floods. So the military engineers are in charge. Our brigade for emergency prevention. This allows us to work in mitigation works and attention to emergencies and disaster management. In mitigation works, we do perforation of wells, complying with the different laws and regulations, risk mitigation and prevention works, like creating bars around the rivers to prevent floods, dynamic barriers in mountains in the communities exposed. We do that to avoid landslides,
Dentro de la
response to
atención de
fires,
incendios
and
es fundamental pues la
it's
recuperación
fundamental
y la salvaguarda de la fauna que se
to
presenta
safeguard
normalmente o que
fauna
está presente en estas zonas de incendios. Ahí
that
vemos en
is
las gráficas
present in these
unas imágenes muy
areas
dicientes
where there
en
are
la que nuestros
fires.
soldados buscan también salvaguardar. Esto
These
se le entrega a las autoridades ambientales correspondientes, esas especies,
are
pues para
handed
salvaguardar
over to
esas
environmental
especies
authorities
nativas de la
so
región,
that
que
we
son quienes
safeguard
más
these
sufren
native
en estos
species
eventos propios de los incendios
who
forestales.
suffer the most in this environmental fire and these forest fires.
Dentro del eje temático número 3, que es la gestión ambiental,
That's is 3,
donde está el saneamiento
environmental
básico,
management,
protección ambiental y los ecosistemas,
basic
pues está
sanitation,
fundamentalmente
ecosystems,
esa capacidad de reducir esos riesgos
the
sanitarios dentro de
capacity
nuestras
to reduce
unidades.
sanitary risks in the different
Permanentemente,
units.
estos gestores ambientales lo que buscan
These
es generar la
environmental
conciencia
managers, they want
hacia
to
nuestros hombres
generate awareness in
del
our men
manejo de los diferentes
about
recursos,
the
del
management of
manejo
the
de las
different
diferentes
resources,
disposiciones de
management of the
materiales
different
residuales
uh,
para que
final
no
disposition of
tengamos
waste,
ningún inconveniente ni
so that
afectación
we
allá en nuestras
don't
unidades. Promover la
affect
educación ambiental,
our units, promote
promover
environmental
la educación
education
ambiental permanentemente con los colegios, con las instituciones
constantly
académicas
with
de la región
schools,
y
academic
contribuir con la
entities of
prevención
the
de los
region,
ecosistemas.
and the prevention in ecosystems.
Algo que nos ha funcionado mucho en los últimos años y está
Something
de
that
la mano con el
has
Ministerio del Medio
worked
Ambiente
in the
es
last
crear
years
unos viveros
with
y unos
the Ministry of the
macroviveros.
Environment is
Estos
create
macroviveros están
greenhouses and
estratégicamente
macro
ubicados
greenhouses.
en
They are
diferentes zonas del país con
strategically
ecosistemas
located in
diferentes
different areas of the
que nos
country with different
permiten
ecosystems
regenerar
that allow
especies
us
nativas
to
propias
regenerate
de
native
cada región,
species
de la
of the
mano con la
regions,
corporación autónoma, de la
along
mano
with
con las
autonomous
diferentes
corporations and
entidades
the different
locales, de
local
gobierno,
entities,
particulares, que se suman a estas campañas de
private
reforestación.
entities that
Estos macroviveros han sido
help in
de
this
gran impacto,
reforestation
eh,
campaigns. These macro
son de gran
greenhouses have had a
impacto y
great
de rápida
impact
ejecución, porque tienen
and
una
rapid
circulación
execution
bastante
because they have
veloz
quite
para la reproducción de estas
fast
especies
circulation
que nos
for reproduction
permite
of these
participar
species that
activamente
allow us to
en programas
participate
de reforestación en diferentes
actively in
regiones.
different
Esto hace
reforestation
parte de ese
programs in
esfuerzo
different regions. So
militar no
part of this
armado
military effort,
que nos permite
unarmed
llevar
effort,
consolidación a regiones
that
del
allow
país
us
que están
to bring
afectadas, como es de
consolidation to
conocimiento de
different
todos, por
regions
algunos
affected
temas de seguridad,
by
pero que con
security
esto
issues, but
recuperemos mentes
with
y
this,
corazones en
we
muchas partes del
recover
país.
minds and hearts in many parts of the country.
Ya por último, quiero
Lastly,
decirles cómo el Ejército
I want
Nacional
to tell
está
you how
vinculado
the National Army
a lo largo y ancho del país
is
con
linked
los
to
grandes programas, los grandes
big
seminarios,
programs,
las grandes
big
reuniones con
seminars,
respecto
and
a
meetings
nuestro medio ambiente. El
related
año
to
inmediatamente
the
anterior en la ciudad
environment.
de Cali
In Cali last year,
se tuvo la oportunidad de recibir
we had the
la
opportunity to
COP16.
receive
Todas nuestras fuerzas militares participaron
COP16.
activamente del evento, no
Military forces
solamente desde el punto
participated
de vista de
actively,
seguridad, porque un
not only
evento de
from
esta
the security
naturaleza
perspective,
pensaría
because an
uno
event like
que
this,
lleva es la seguridad. Así fue, el
we would
despliegue de
think
seguridad fue bastante
it's
grande,
about security. The
pero la
security
parte
deployment
técnica,
was big,
la
but
parte
the technical
técnica
part
de nuestra Fuerza Aeroespacial, de nuestra
of
Armada
our
Nacional, de
airspace
nuestra Policía
area,
y del
the
Ejército
National
Nacional,
Army, the police,
nos
and the
permite
National Army
participar
allows
y
us to
mostrarle a la
participate
población en
and
diferentes
show the
escenarios,
population in
pues,
different
todo
scenarios
este lineamiento ambiental, toda
all
esta
this
educación ambiental
environmental
que
education
para algunas distancias es desconocido que se hace
that
al nivel
some
de las
instances
instituciones,
don't know that we do it in the institution,
mostrándoles la importancia de la protección del
showing
medio
them the
ambiente,
importance of
mostrándoles la
environmental protection,
importancia
showing
de
them
la
the
protección del medio
importance
ambiente dentro
of
del esquema de seguridad y
environmental protection
hablándoles
within
un
the
poco de la
security scheme,
seguridad multidimensional,
and,
bien
and
acuñada ya en nuestra
also talking about
Organización de Estados Americanos,
multi-dimensional security, which is a term created by the Organization of American States, so that you understand that security means protection in different dimensions, and one of them is the environment. An army that is protective of natural resources, capable of mitigating the main causes of deforestation, safeguarding environmental sovereignty. Regions with optimum conditions where civil population had the possibility to develop their life project in a healthy environment. Military forces that are respectful of the environment, with processes and procedures that are sustainable, made cross-cutting for adequate environmental management and good practices that seek to protect the environment. That is the final state desire for this campaign plan and this program for defense security. The three thematic axes and the different variables contemplated, they seek that. An army that protects environmental resources and contribute to the regions so that they have optimum conditions for the civil population, and a force respectful of the environment with adequate practices and habits that allow to have sustainable processes for the environment in the different units and in different missions and processes. So this is the information from Colombia, and we are open to give you any information. We have officials to whom we can contribute and share the experiences that we have had in this Ayacucho campaign plan and the importance that we have given to compliance with these guidelines, and as a part of these regulated efforts and in compliance with the worldwide guidelines, which is protection to natural resources in the environment. Thank you. This is my intervention. One regards, and we want to thank you for these spaces to share the experiences of the military forces committed to the country and the region.
Nuestro reconocimiento al Brigadier General
Our recognition to Brigadier General Roque Salcedo for sharing his experience of the Republic of Colombia in the fight and the promotion of these activities, highlighting the preservation of biodiversity conducted by the Army, as well as the environmental protection. Third presenter, Republic of Ecuador. It's a pleasure to present the Commander Julio Mantiola Rodriguez of the Army of Ecuador, who is the General Director of Aquatic Spaces and Northern Coast Guard. He has ample experience in maritime authority, where he has been the Oceanic and Coast Guard Port Captain, Deputy Director of Security to Navigation Practices, and Maritime Advisor of the General Division of Aquatic Spaces. As well, he was part of the technical mission of Ecuador before the International Maritime Organization, specializing in port and maritime management, and he has another strategy degree on military commandants. So, Captain Commander Julio Mendiola Rodriguez, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for this introduction. It's an honor and a true pleasure to be here as the representative of the Navy of Ecuador. Thank you for the invitation to this third conference on environmental protection organized by the EADB. This is a very important topic for Ecuador, the prevention and preservation of aquatic spaces, and this is a protagonic role played by the Army of Ecuador. Let me share screen first and foremost to begin with my presentation.
Y me confirman, por favor, si la
Please
tienen.
confirm if you can see it.
Sí, muchas gracias.
Yes, we
Continúe.
can see it. Please
Perfecto.
carry on.
Bien. Para esta intervención podemos
For my
observar,
presentation,
una agenda que hemos
we can
preparado.
see the
La
agenda
misma
that we
tiene
have
como
prepared.
objetivo analizar
This,
la
this
prevención de la
agenda has as an
contaminación
objective
marítima a
to
través de
analyze
la
the
rutina
prevention
aplicada por
of
la Armada
maritime
del Ecuador,
contamination
un
and
estudio del
the
caso
activities
reciente
performed
ocurrido
by
en
the Armed
Esmeraldas
Forces of
en
Ecuador.
el mes de marzo del
Case study
2025,
that took place in Esmeraldas in May 2025 and highlighting as well the best practices implemented by the Army of Ecuador to carry out and to tackle with these incidents, and some brief conclusions to adjourn my presentation. Let's then start with my introduction. For this, I would like to mention that aquatic spaces at a national level are a vital resource for Ecuador, not only because it's a source of food and trade connectivity, but also is the natural habitat of a huge amount of ecosystems and a very unique biodiversity, covering a maritime surface 5 times bigger than the land surface of Ecuador. It's approximately 1,092,000 square kilometers. These aquatic spaces are in constant threat. And amongst these threats, it's maritime contamination that affects not only the environment, but also it affects the communities that live on out of the resources that inhabit such area and affecting the national economy. Regarding the legal framework of Ecuador, we have a constitution based on 2008 where nature is a subject of rights. Obviously, this is a strength and an opportunity because it allows us to interact and to employ a legal standard at an international level. Therefore, we can permanently strengthen measures of control to avoid pollution, always in agreement with the subject of rights and the rights of nature. It is important also to mention some legal aspects that we derive from this constitution or our Magna Carta. There are secondary and primary activities that were approved by the current state's agenda. This is compliance to current standards and the applied doctrine of the Armed Forces of Ecuador. And just to mention our applicable doctrine, prior to this, I would like to present our organization chart in Ecuador. We have two branches, one of defense and one of security and maritime protection. These two branches, it's under the Maritime Authority, meaning the Fourth Army of Ecuador meets or it's under the role of the Maritime Authority. There we have different executing institutions and operative branches. The operative branches allow us to fulfill the role of the maritime policing activities. And in this case, we are under the guard commanders and the sub commanders, as well as the Navy squadrons. To be able to fulfill the role of maritime police, we use all the means and resources of the Maritime Authority. Regarding the executing organizations or bodies, we basically harmonize the international standards. For this, we have the National Division of Aquatic Spaces with its regional divisions, like the Coast Guard Division with their deputy commanders, also the training unit for seamen capacity building, and the Oceanographic Institute of the Armed Forces. These are the executing branches that enable us to meet the three states of the three states that we have, which is the riparian state, amongst others. Amongst the essential goals of the Army of Ecuador in the riparian state, we do not only fight illegal actions in aquatic spaces or provide answers to the, for instance, first responding activities, but also prevention of contamination. Here I mentioned the organic law of protection in the oceans and rivers in aquatic spaces. This is a big space, but we know it as Doncea. This is a law was published on June 14th, this LONSEA law. And the objective of such law is to regulate maritime and river activities in its exercise of sovereignty and its rights of sovereignty in aquatic spaces. And basically, its main goal is to safeguard maritime life. We have a very important title under this law that refers to protection and control and preservation of aquatic spaces. Something very important to mention is precisely the response before leakages of hydrocarbons and contingency plans, meaning the Force Army of Ecuador, as a maritime authority, has the response mechanisms for any type of spill that takes place in maritime spaces, as well as response and preparedness plans to face these contingencies. For this, we have a national plan prepared by the National Division of Aquatic Spaces, Zoning Spaces Planning, developed by regional entities, and local plans that are prepared by the port terminals but are approved by the port captainships. Therefore, we can realize that this law enables us as an armed forces in all Ecuador to have direct participation in this type of incidents, obviously without limiting the participation of other state branches based on the competencies that they are entitled to. Now let's talk about a case study that took place on March 13 of 2025 when we had a leakage of a pipeline of boat that produced leakage. And basically, this was EP Petro Ecuador. The breakage of this pipeline took place in this area. We activated a contingency plan that we have in Ecuador by the state entity responsible for hydrocarbon management. On March 14th of 2025, due to the environmental conditions in that zone, the hydrocarbon that spilled and that affected the rivers Biche and Rio Blanco reached Rio Esmeralda. In this moment, the contingency zoning plan was activated because of the net magnitude of such spill. We were able to articulate and coordinate with the CUE, the Incident Commander Unit, for mitigation and contention actions of this speech in order to avoid its contamination to the urban zones. Here we can see the mouth of the river and how it's connecting with the ocean in River Biche and Rio Blanco. We established some barriers, we dig in ditches, and the river flow of both of the rivers helped it to reach Rio Esmeralda, and we can see here the spill that reached the mouth of the ocean. So it reached the ocean. You can see the tracing of the spill. This was important to prepare ourselves as the Maritime Authority and all the institutions that are part of the Unified Incident Commander were there working jointly to set forth and activate plans to avoid this hydrocarbon spill to become a further issue that could affect the different cities and different maritime spaces in its jurisdiction, for instance, affecting or preventing its affection to our neighboring country, Colombia. The activities that were undertaken were dispersion works to avoid dispersion of the hydrocarbon with the Coast Guard authorities, working with private vessels, tow vessels, to be able to tackle the spill. And we also work with the different UV machinery to be able to locate the spill and its progress, working together with our tugboats. It was important to involve also our media to alert where the stain was moving towards to prepare contention measures. We worked with different aero-maritime means of transportation, maritime means of transportation, meaning not media, but means of transportation, as well as private vessels and tugboats also were part of it. The Maritime Authority and its daily situation chart was fundamental. There we can trace the different stain and we could alert the different stains of crude oil and we could trace the stain to prevent further affectation to any area. The Coast Guard of the Armed Forces of Ecuador played an important role as well because these are vessels that could transport the disperser substance beyond the mouth of the river to cover the sector in a better way, to control it using dispersants, and to avoid the stain to float on the ocean surface, like this affecting other maritime species. Therefore, we close ocean, beaches, and we had to clean up. This is not the direct responsibility of the Maritime Authority, but the participation of other authorities was fundamental to comply with the provisions in the law and to jointly help on remediation actions. The cleaning of the beaches took place in a joint manner in the latter days. The participation of logistical vessels of the armed forces of Ecuador were also present in this area to provide drinking water to the affected populations that suffer from the spill. Obviously, the spill, we had to close some of the drinking water plants in the province, and we had to then supply them with drinking water to the population. So we did it with the support of the logistical vessels from the Ecuador Army. The means that we employed, I mentioned SAVE, Maritime SAVE, Coast Guards, also River Coast Guards participated, and air maritime operations from the Army and from the Air Forces also participated. Almost 300 soldiers and squadrons were deployed, as well as tugboats, vessels, and speedboats. It's important to mention that the participation of all these means of transportation, as well as the different units and the joint work that we did, was fundamental to provide effective response to the spill in order to protect the affectation to other areas. Of course, the ones that were mainly affected were the ones close to the mouth of the river. I would like to mention the best practices that we employed. Obviously, this was a product of the lessons learned that we had. The first was the approval and authorization of contingency plans. Contingency plans, without any doubt, are fundamental because it allows us to really coordinate with the port captainships, private sector, in a coordinated response scheme. This plan is being permanently updated, incorporating lessons learned of previous incidents. It also updates and adjusts emergency protocols and delivers it and communicates it to all entities involved. Institutional and interinstitutional coordination has also been fundamental. We talked with the different ministries, local governments, non-profit organizations, or NGOs, working together as well with international organization as the International Maritime Organization and FIDAC, which are the international funds before hydrocarbon spills that were also activated. This ensures a holistic approach with the coordination of all technical resources acting together. It's fundamental as well to do periodical drills that allow us to assess our response capacity and our preparedness capacity in order to constantly improve our mitigation and control measures regarding the raising of awareness campaigns or awareness raising campaigns, it enables us to create a prevention culture. And this is fundamental to avoid spills and to know what to do. Also, the shipping companies, seamen, fishermen have been alerted, as well as coastline communities know about these plans. These plans operate from a zone level, local level, regional level, and national level. It's fundamental because if not, it's useless to have an instrument that we don't share, that we don't communicate, and people don't know how to use it. So it's very important to socialize it. And like this, we also comply with the standard that demands dissemination of information on how to act in case of emergency. And the last one is the use of advanced technologies. This was very helpful to have modeling platforms and the system, satellite imaging, drone, to also have early detection and to monitor where the spill stain was moving and trace it and control it. So the use of technology is fundamental. These best practices allow us to have a very robust and efficient system that can reduce risks and to provide timely response in case of this kind of emergencies. And to conclude, I would like to read some of the main conclusions that we have considered important. The case of Esmeraldas, it's an evidence that no country is exempt for this type of incidents, but also it shows us importance to have response protocols where cooperation, technological innovation, and prevention culture are key to guarantee protection of our oceans for future generations. The immediate activation of the contingency zonal planning, where several institutions and organizations of the province of Esmeralda took part in, allow us to establish immediate response actions for the contention and dispersion of the raw oil, the crude oil that was moving in our water bodies. The application of our organic maritime law that it's strengthening the role of the armed forces of Ecuador is the guarantee on safety and maritime protection that is a regulatory framework that organizes and guides the institutional response facing environmental emergencies. Also, contamination, maritime contamination, it's a constant threat that demands prevention, controls, and coordinated actions. Therefore, we need interinstitutional coordination and the integration of human resources as well as material resources to reduce the response times. And this is my presentation. Thank you very much to the defense, the Inter-American Defense Board. Thank you very much for this space, and thank you, attendees. And we're here if you have any questions on Ecuador's case study. We want to express our gratitude to our commander, Julio Mandiola Rodriguez, that expresses the commitment of the armed forces of Ecuador in the defense of maritime resources and the protection of areas with high biodiversity. Fourth presenter, the United States of America. Next, we give the floor to Wilder Alejandro Sanchez, advisor of the International Strategic Studies and chair of the consultancy company Second Fork Strategies in Washington, D.C. He is an analyst in geopolitics, defense, and environmental practices with more than 20 publications on academic magazines and chapters of different books. Also, he has been a keynote speaker in different forums and he has a master's degree with the American University. His presentation is titled Operations of the Armed Forces in Latin America and the Caribbean Against Illegal Fishing, the Future of Fleets. Mr. Sanchez, welcome, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much. Let me put my presentation on screen.
Sí se ve, señor Sánchez.
Could you confirm if you can see my presentation? Yes, thank you very much. Dear Chair, officials, and members of the Inter-American Defense Board, good morning. First and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to the Inter-American Defense Board for the opportunity to present to all of you in this conference. I understand the work of IADB because my father was also an appointed officer almost 3 decades ago. It's a pleasure that I am now part of the Inter-American Defense Board and to present to you all this morning. The topic at hand is highly relevant for all Latin American and Caribbean countries. Illegal fishing that is non-declared and non-regulated, and the role of the armies in the region to combat such crime. Illegal fishing that is non-declared and not regulated, it's a crime affecting all of the region. And I would like to refer to the term illegal fishing just to save time, and we will summarize it in this concept of illegal fishing. The Pacific Ocean, the Southern Atlantic Ocean, the Caribbean Sea, and our rivers and lakes, illegal fishing in these regions it's increasing. Therefore, the Navy forces of our region need to be constantly present in territorial waters and the exclusive economic zones, besides rivers and lakes that are within the national territories. The objective is not just to list the operations done against illegal fishing, but rather I would like us to focus in a very productive discussion of the present and future role of the national armed forces in such context. There is some regional aspects to be considered. This is not something that we can discuss isolated. Illegal fishing is just one of the many threats in our oceans that our armed forces are fighting in a daily basis. We need to consider this aspect. It's fundamental to be able to prepare our fleets from the present and the future to be able also to be ready for different sanctions. I believe that illegal fishing in the Latin American and Caribbean oceans can be divided in three levels. First one, illegal fishing at a national level. The fishing vessels of X country operate within the territorial waters or exclusive economic zones of the countries of origins of the group. These fleets are mainly including some very artisanal fishing boats. In 2024, for instance, the Armed Forces of Chile arrested two illegal fishing vessels that were in their lakes with 1.9 tons of Mitulus chilenis on board, or choros, which is a type of fish. And also in Marcona, in the northern of the country, the Peruvian war marine had to arrest some seamen. Let's talk about the illegal fishing at a regional level that are fishing in X country and travel to country Y and operate in their territorial waters or their exclusive economic zone. Basically, all the countries of the region are facing these type of problems where they're just crossing the illegally to territorial waters. For instance, the Dominican Republic Armed Forces had to stop 10 Haitian fishermen in their territorial waters fishing illegally. Also, the Colombian Armed Forces seized more than 700 kilograms of illegal fishing in the different departments where they were captured. You can see the picture. Also, the illegal fishing at a national level, these vessels are mainly small boats or artisanal boats. Thirdly, illegal fishing at an extra regional level. We know that there are fishing vessels that are in extra regional countries called distant water fleeting, distant water fishing fleets. This is the name that we give them to these distant water fishing fleets that navigate in South American waters and operate without any authorization. Many of them come from China, but other come from other Asian countries and even from Spain. The fleets are deployed and they follow migration patterns of ocean life. These extra-regional fleets, they cross the Magallanes Strait, and they can operate illegally in Argentinian waters towards the Western Pacific, going through Chile and Peru and reaching the Galapagos Islands in Ecuador. These fleets are increasing, not only operating in international waters, but there are many other examples of vessels that are crossing borders illegally and continue operating without any authorization in the exclusive economic zones of South American countries. The Latin American and Caribbean armed forces are actively participating against illegal fishing. There's important work being done in waterways and riverways as well. The Force Army of Colombia in the Department of the Archipelago attended a report of Colombian fishermen and detected an artisanal vessel with a foreign flag that was in the Isla del Cayo in its territorial ocean that was there without authorization. They seized 1 kilo of lobster. In Brazil as well, the Guaruja patrol vessel participated in an operation in the state of Amapa, and they had 5 tons of fish that was seized. The War Marine of Peru also conducted recent operations against the Rio Piura operation. In the meantime, if we go more south, Chile has used a submarine to monitor the extra-regional fishing fleets to ensure that they do not enter Chilean maritime territory. Finally, let's talk a bit about Central America. We have examples of Honduras with this is El Salvador, sorry. This is the Armed Forces of El Salvador conducted an operation against illegal fishing in the Salvadorian territorial waters. Meanwhile, in Panama, the National Air Navy Service of Panama, last January, they were able to seize a maritime air navy operation in an operation in Jicarita, in the protected coastline of Coiba. And personally, I'm a pessimist on the future of illegal fishing in Latin America and the Caribbean. This situation is worsening. Illegal fishing is going to increase exponentially in the next years in the 3 nivels I just mentioned. As the world population grows and the depredation of oceans, contaminations, climate change, we see that governments, fishing companies, and the captains of these vessels are desperate to find new source of maritime resources. In general, when they are detected by vessels of the national authorities, these illegal fishing vessels try to escape to the jurisdictions of other countries or they surrender, but they have no penalties. It's possible that this violence increases in the future, and there are incidents that have taken place that are really concerning. In 2016, the Mantilla fishing boat was in the Argentinian prefecture, and they tried to arrest the fishing boat Lu Yan Yuan Yu 010. This Argentinian sinks this fishing boat, and basically they responded with, I mean, the Argentinian coasters chased and sank Chinese vessel that it says that it responded with some firearms.
2018, in Suriname attacked illegal fishermen in Guyana, leaving 20 deaths. And I have to be realistic. It's possible that in the future we see more incidents like this, violence between legal and illegal fishermen and other criminals in the high sea could happen. The predation of the seas in our region demands, with more demand and competency to control maritime life, this will ignite violence. So it is necessary to support coastal operations against illegal fishing in Latin America and the Caribbean. It is necessary to discuss new strategies to face this crime in a more efficient manner. We don't usually fight between us. The last conflict was in 1995 between Ecuador and Peru, the last war where we participated actively was the Falkland Island between Argentina and the UK. It's been years since one vessel shot against another one. There have been tensions and incidents occasionally since then. There hasn't been any other war. In our region, wars are minimum, although there are occasional tensions and territorial disputes. For example, the government of Nicolas Maduro continues to threaten regional peace, specifically the Republic of Guyana over the Essequibo area. And army missions, operations of patrolling, maintaining operational availability of fleet, and acting as a deterrent element in different conflicts within the states, and fight drug trafficking, smuggling, people trafficking, and environmental crimes such as animal trafficking, illegal fishing, illegal mining. With catastrophes, armies of Latin America and the Caribbean participate in operations of humanitarian assistance and disaster response, and the armies are in charge of Antarctic operations in the south, Antarctic operations, and this is not about external conflicts in the region, but we have to consider this data to understand the future fleets in Latin America and the Caribbean and future operations against illegal fishing. As I said before, there are ties that we have to consider. Illegal fishing cannot be discussed just in the air. It's operations that the army carry out. Relations between our governments will influence the level of cooperations between the armies and vessels and other systems that are used by the services fleets. Finding, monitoring, and if necessary, intercept illegal fishing vessels in seas such as the South Atlantic, the Caribbean is not a homogeneous problem. It's not the same to monitor a fleet of 200, 300, or even 400 vessels than finding a single vessel or a mini fleet of 10 to 12 artisanal boats. So what do we need the fleets in Latin America and the Caribbean in the future? The objective is to discuss the situation of the armies, and we have to talk about the armies in terms of combat to illegal fishing. There are requirements that the military official and the defense we know. It's important to repeat. To fight illegal fishing, we need more planes in the air. Maritime patrol aircraft help monitor fleet of over 300 vessels and locate single boats doing illegal fishing. Some countries have acquired this capacity. For example, the Argentinian armed forces have acquired planes, Logic Bay-3 Orion, used previously by the Norwegian Air Forces. The countries should expand and modernize their air patrol fleets in terms of air platforms. I have to mention helicopters A helicopter that takes off from a high sea vessel increases the monitoring and surveillance capacities. An ocean patrol vessel, offshore patrol vessel, can transport a helicopter and boats on board. With all these platforms deployed in a maritime operations, one OPV vessel is transformed in a mini fleet with air capacities and surface capacities, which is very helpful to identify and intercept illegal fishing vessels. About the future, an interesting information is that many armies in Latin America and the Caribbean, they are obtaining vessels that are ideal for maritime patrol and fighting illegal fishing. Let's go south to understand the situation. The Argentinian army have acquired OPV vessels. These are being used to protect the sea in Argentina. In Brazil, they are using patrol vessels of the Macae class. In Peru, they have built some vessels and they have some facilities in, and they are building other vessels. In Ecuador, Astinave has built two vessels for the Coast Guards. In Colombia, the Cotecmar Corporation has built different patrol vessels. Recently, the patrolling vessel has started to operate in the Caribbean. To the north, we noticed that the Coast Guard of the Defense Forces of Guyana received in 2024 a completely new vessel, the Shafut vessel, built by the North American company Betashaw. Other Caribbean countries are investing to protect their seas. The Royal Force of Defense of Bahamas have carried out the Sunny Bottom project. They renewed their fleet with the acquisition of patrolling vessels and transportation vessels from the shipyard Dame. And the Metashark shipyard signed a contract with Jamaica for the Jamaican forces to build a fleet of 22 patrol boats. These boats will be very helpful to patrol the exclusive economic zone of Jamaica. The U.S. has a positive role in the region. I am talking about a project of the North American Army signed by the Metashark shipyard. They will build 13 patrol vessels for friendly countries, South Central America and the Caribbean. They have built 7 boats for El Salvador, Guatemala, Costa Rica, and Panama. Last August, the Army of Dominican Republic received the second vessel of the program. The objective of the project is to strengthen the Caribbean armies to fight trafficking. These vessels will help fight other crimes such as illegal fishing. There is a trend throughout the region to get small vessels that are fast for sea patrolling for operations against illegal fishing. And in terms of how to fight illegal fishing, we have to think about technologies and strategies. Air forces and the Latin American and Caribbean armies have adopted non-tripulated planes. This is for intelligence surveillance processes and like helicopters, air drones in vessels can provide important capacities of air recognition in maritime territories. On the other hand, these vessels without crews are being introduced in South America. For what I know, due to my investigations, a Brazilian company in the Prom and Taiwan are developing the uncrewed systems, and the Colombian armies are making tests in the uncrewed systems or naval drones, Navy drones. I hope in the future the vessels in the region can transport and deploy these uncrewed systems and air and Navy drones for the monitoring of their respective seas. Also, satellite images can help find and identify vessels that are doing illegal fishing. Several Latin American countries have advanced programs, but there are also private companies and organizations offering these services precisely for operations such as fighting illegal fishing. On the screen, we see some examples such as Global Fishing Watch and the private companies Spire and Hawkeye. We start to think about the future of fleets and how emerging technologies can help in missions such as fighting illegal fishing, the Inter-American Port, with conferences like these to discuss how emerging technologies can help armed forces, including missions such as humanitarian aid and to fight crimes such as illegal fishing or illegal mining. I would like to be a part of these discussions. Finally, we have to remember that criminals are not interested in borders. They are not interested that our governments, armed forces, and coast guards protect borders. They don't care about treaties and international maritime law. So there has to be more cooperation within the regional armies to fight illegal fishing. No army has enough submarines, vessels, and air systems to monitor territorial waters and exclusive economic zones on their own. An alternative is the creation of new agreements or bilateral treaties or regional treaties. One of them is the shipwright agreements that the United States carry out in the Caribbean. Another alternative is to enhance the Inter-American Treaty of Reciprocal Treaty, the Rio Pact or SIMSE, and the CSIS. They have proposed to modernize TIA 21 so that the document is more relevant for geopolitics and the realities of the Western Hemisphere. So enhancing and reviewing TIA, this document that I called TIA 21, this document could be activated by member states when these illegal vessels cross the border so that the neighboring countries can deploy naval resources to support patrolling operations and, if necessary, interception. As a conclusion, I have some final observation. Illegal fishing happens throughout Latin America and the Caribbean with domestic ships, regional and extra-regional ships that act illegally in a non-regularized manner. My presentation was centered in illegal fishing in the seas of the region, but illegal fishing, we have to analyze lakes. Fighting illegal fishing is one of the several missions that the armies have in Latin America and the Caribbean. In recent years, the armies have acquired vessels that are ideal to fight illegal fishing, and we need more air patrolling, and the armies have experiment with new technologies like uncrewed crafts. And I reiterate my call for reviewing of TIAV and defense multilateral agreements so that we can exhaust illegal fishing. Thank you.
Extendemos nuestro agradecimiento al conferencista
We
Wilder
thank
Alejandro Sánchez por su exposición,
Mr.
que ha puesto en
Sanchez for
evidencia
his
cómo la
presentation.
pesca ilegal
Was
compromete
shown
la
how
seguridad
illegal
alimentaria,
fishing
la economía y la soberanía de
compromises
nuestros
food
estados.
security
Su análisis
and the
nos
sovereignty
invita a
of our
fortalecer
states.
la
His
cooperación
analysis
marítima regional y
allows us
actuar
to
con decisión
think about
frente a estas
strengthening
amenazas transnacionales.
regional
A
cooperation.
continuación, entraremos en un
Now,
receso de 10 minutos
we will
para
have a
posteriormente
recess of 10
regresar
minutes so that we
a
can
las 11:10 de la
come back
mañana
at
con
11:10
el
in the
quinto
morning
conferencista de
with
la
the fifth
República Italiana.
speaker
Muchas gracias.
from the Republic of Italy. Thank you.
Sí, así está. Concluida la pausa, retomamos la
This
tercera
pause
conferencia de
has
protección del medio
concluded.
ambiente
We
organizada por la
will
Junta Interamericana de Defensa.
resume our conference
A
on
continuación,
environmental
seguimos con el
protection
programa de
organized
ponencias
by the
previstas para esta jornada.
Inter-American Defense Board.
Gracias
Let's
por permanecer
continue
con
and
nosotros.
thank you so much for
Quinto
staying with
conferencista,
us. Our fifth
República Italiana.
presenter is from the Republic of Italy.
Presentamos al capitán
We now
Daniel
present
Bufa,
Captain Daniel
oficial
Bufa. He's
del
the
Cuerpo de Carabineros de
officer
Italia
of the
especializado en delitos
police forces
ambientales
of
y
Italy
agroalimentarios,
specialized in
así como en la
environmental
protección de
protection as
especies en
well as in
peligro
the
de extinción,
protection of
CITES.
species, endangered species,
Actualmente
CIPES.
se desempeña como
Currently,
comandante de
he
la
is
División
the division
de
commander
Investigación Ambiental y de la División
of
CITES
the
en
CITES
Emilia-Romagna,
division in
coordinando
Emilia-Romagna.
operaciones de
He
investigación con
coordinates
una sólida
investigation
experiencia en
operations with a
cooperación
solid
internacional.
experience in international
Ha sido experto
cooperation.
en la Unión
He has
Europea,
been expert in the
en proyectos de
EU,
timing en
in
Macedonia del
projects
Norte y
of
Jordania, misiones en
Macedonia,
México y Argelia,
Jordan, Mexico, and
contribuyendo a
Argelia,
propuestas
contributing
legislativas
to
y a
law
la formación
proposals
de
and
altos
the
funcionarios y
training of
autoridades
high
policiales
officers
extranjeras.
and
Domina
foreign
los
police
idiomas italiano,
authorities. He speaks
inglés y
Italian,
español.
English, and
Es
Spanish.
profesor en el
He's
Centro de
a
Excelencia para la
professor
Protección del
in the
Medio Ambiente
Excellency
y
Center for
autor de
Environmental
publicaciones
Protection
jurídicas
and author of
sobre
legal
derecho ambiental.
publications on
El tema de su
environmental rights,
exposición es
environmental
el
law.
rol de los carabineros
He
de
will talk
Italia
about the
en la
role of
protección del medio
Italian police
ambiente.
forces in the
Señor
protection of
capitán
the environment.
Daniel Bufa,
With
le
you,
damos el uso de la
we
palabra.
give the floor to Major General Daniel Bufa.
Muy buenos días.
Excuse me, to
¿Puedes verme?
Captain Daniel Bufa. Hello, good morning. Can you see my
Perfecto.
screen? Can you hear me? Perfect.
Señoras y señores,
Ladies and
autoridades,
gentlemen,
colegas, es
authorities,
para mí un honor
colleagues,
dirigirme a ustedes en esta
it's an
conferencia
honor to
internacional.
address you all in this
Agradezco a los
international
organizadores
conference.
por la
I would like
invitación y
to
por la
express my
oportunidad de
gratitude to the
compartir
organizers
experiencias
of
en un tema tan
EADB
relevante.
and
Y
the
ahora voy a
opportunity to
compartir
share our
la
experiences in
presentación.
this relevant topic. Let me share my screen.
¿Puedes ver?
Can you see my screen?
Viendo su pantalla, más no la presentación, estimado capitán.
We are unable to see the presentation. We see the screen, however, not the PowerPoint, not the slide itself.
Ahora.
Can you see it now?
Ahora sí se ve muy bien. Por favor, le solicitamos que lo ponga en modo presentación.
Yes, now please
Perfecto.
put it on
Ahora vamos a
presentation
ver
mode.
cuáles son los temas
Yes,
que trataremos
let's
hoy.
see today's
Pues primero, la
agenda.
Organización de la
First,
Defensa y
the
la Seguridad
Organization of
en
Defense
Italia en
and
general.
Security in
Y
Italy
pues, en particular,
overall,
enfocaremos nuestra
and
atención
we will
sobre las
focus
funciones de la
on the
Organización de
different
Carabineros.
functions of
Y al
the
final,
police forces
vamos a ver cómo es organizado
in
este comando de
environmental
las
matters
potestades
and
ambientales y agroalimentarias, que es lo
agri-food
que
matters as
nos
well.
importa más
We
hoy.
will focus on
Pues primero,
environmental
la
protection, which
Organización
is
de la
the topic at
Defensa.
hand.
Capitán Daniel Bufa, disculpe
Excuse,
que lo interrumpa. Por favor,
Captain
para que
Daniel
coloque
Bufa.
su exposición, se ve muy bien, pero
The
necesitamos que lo
presentation,
coloque en
we
modo
need it
presentación para
in
que se
full
aprecie
mode or
mejor.
presentation mode, please, to be able to see it clearly, because right now we're not seeing it in
Ahora.
presentation mode. Can you see it now?
No, aún no está
No,
en modo
not yet.
presentación.
It's not in presentation mode.
Estoy en modalidad de presentación. ¿Lo ves?
We're
Primero
not
tiene
seeing
que
the
presentar, después
presentation
compartir. Me
mode
indican
yet.
acá el
Yes,
elemento
first
técnico, señor capitán.
you have to present and then share screen. That's the instructions we're receiving. Excuse us, Captain.
Ahora, ¿cómo se ve?
Can you see it now?
¿Puedes verlo bien? ¿Se ve?
Bueno, adelante, señor capitán. Sí, se puede apreciar, no en modo presentación, pero sí se puede
Not in
apreciar. Continúe, por
presentation
favor,
mode, but please
capitán.
continue. Don't you worry.
Ok.
Okay,
Así,
let's
como les
continue.
dijo, como en todos los estados,
As in
aquí
every
también nos tenemos
state,
dos
we
ministerios
also
que son
have two
los dos
ministries
encargados
which
de
are
proteger a los
responsible of
ciudadanos.
protecting
Por un lado
citizens.
está el
On
Ministerio
one
de la
hand, we have the
Defensa,
Ministry of
que es
Defense,
encargado de proteger
responsible
desde la
of
amenaza
protecting
extranjera
any foreign
externa
threats,
y por
external
y el
threats to our
brazo
country,
operativo es,
and
como en
the
todos los estados,
operational
el
branch,
Ejército,
as
la
in every
Marina y la
state, is
Aeronáutica.
the
Y por otro
Army,
lado está el
the
Ministerio del
Navy,
Interior,
and
encargado de la
Aeronautics. And then we have
seguridad
the Ministry
y
of
de
Internal
garantizar
Affairs,
el orden público.
responsible
Y el
of
brazo
guaranteeing public
operativo es la
order,
Policía de
and the
Estado.
operational branch
Aquí en
is the
Italia
state
nos
police.
tenemos
Here in
también
Italy,
el
we
Arma dei
also
Carabinieri, que
have
se pone
the
en una
what
posición
we call the
mediana,
Carabiniers, or the
porque por
police,
un
which
lado
is
es
in
una
the
fuerza
mid
armada
position. On
autónoma
one hand,
y
is an
por otro lado es una
autonomous
fuerza de policía a
armed
competencia
forces, but
general.
also it's
Eso
a
significa que,
carabinier,
por
or
ejemplo,
national police
como
force in
Fuerza Armada
Italy,
tenemos
meaning like
que
the armed forces, we
hacemos
must
estas funciones de defensa de la
conduct
patria, de
these
protección diplomática,
activities
de
of
misiones
diplomatic defense,
internacionales
nation
y el
defense,
ejercicio
international
exclusivo de
missions,
las
and the
funciones de
exclusive
policía militar
exercise
para
of
las Fuerzas Armadas de Italia.
military and police
Por otro
operations for
lado,
the armed forces as well.
como
On the other hand,
fuerza de policía, como fuerza
as
policial,
police
nos tenemos,
forces,
como en todos los
we
estados,
have,
una
as in
actividad de
every
control
state, to
del
conduct
territorio,
activities
donde
of
nos hacemos
territorial
la
control,
patrulla, la
patrolling,
protección civil en
as
caso
well
de
as
catástrofes
civilian
naturales
protection in case of natural
y la
disasters,
actividad
and
investigativa
the
clásica.
investigation
Y
activities
también esa actividad
in a more
investigativa
classical
puedes
manner.
encontrarte en
Also, in
sectores
these activities, you
especializados
can find that in the
específicos,
different
como por
specific
ejemplo
activities,
pueden
as
ser
for instance,
la
we
protección del
have
medio ambiente.
protection of the
Y por
environment.
eso
And
esta es la
therefore,
organización funcional
the
de
functional
los carabinieri.
organization of
Y
the
puedes ver que está
police
abajo la
forces, you
organización
can see
forestal,
below we have
ambiental y
the
agroalimentaria, que es
forestry,
un mando
agro,
dirigido
food
por un general de la
section,
Fuerza
which
Armada que es
are
encargado
addressed
específicamente
by a
de
specific officer
garantizar
that
el medio
specifically
ambiente y proteger el medio
oversights
ambiente.
the environment
¿Cómo
and
es
protects the
organizado? Ahora
environment.
vamos a ver cómo
And
es
this is a bit of
organizado
the
este
organizational
comando Unidad
chart of
Forestales,
how
Ambientales y
this
Agroalimentarias, que no, le
unit
llamamos
and how is
con
it
el anagrama
organized.
CUFA.
We call it UFA for its Italian acronym.
El comando CUFA
The
nació
KUFA
en el
command
2016
was
y
born in
le se
or was
asignaron
founded in
funciones específicas. Por un
2016
lado,
with
la
two
protección de los
specific
recursos ambientales, del territorio
missions.
y
One,
de
the
la
protection
agua.
of the
Y
environmental
por otro
resources,
lado, atribuciones en
including
el
water and
campo de la
soil, and
seguridad, de los
also
controles
in the
en el
field
sector
of
agroalimentario.
security of the agro
Por esas
food
específicas
sector.
actividades, la dependencia no es solo la
Our
dependencia del Ministerio de la
dependency
Defensa,
is not
así
being
es
just
una
Ministry of
dependencia
Defense, but its
directa
competency,
por
it's
el Ministerio de la
directly by
Agricultura
the
y el
Ministry of
Ministerio del
Agriculture
Ambiente.
and the Ministry of
¿Cuáles
the
son las
Environment. They're both
características, los
jointly
factores
working together. So what are the
principales de
characteristics,
los que
are the
trabajan
main
en este comando? Pues primero
actions
necesitamos de
undertaken by the
profesionalidad
people working
porque
under this
estamos
command?
hablando de un
First of all,
sector específico,
professionality,
un
because
sector
this is a very
especializado
specific,
y
specialized
también
sector,
necesitamos de
and
tecnología,
also we need
atención constante a la innovación,
technology,
de las innovaciones,
attention,
como
care,
dijo
innovation, as
el colega que
previously
habló
mentioned
antes de
by
mí.
my
Y
predecessor.
al final está
And
la necesidad de una
we
capilaridad.
have the need
Como vamos a
of
ver, pues la
this
capilaridad es
capillarity.
fundamental
As we
en
can
esta
see, this
protección del
is
territorio y del
basic
medio
to
ambiente.
protect the environment and the
¿Cuántas
territory.
personas están
How many
empleadas en esta
persons are
actividad?
employed?
¿Sí?
Sorry to
Discúlpame que te
interrupt you,
interrumpa.
Captain.
Se ha
We
quedado en una
are
sola
not
diapositiva. No
seeing
sé
the
si tienes
slideshow.
algún problema porque
I don't
está
know
en
if
la
you have
presentación de
any
la organización.
issues,
Claro, ahora
because
sí
we're
está en
just
recursos
seeing the
humanos y
organization
logística.
chart. Okay, now we're seeing human resources and logistics. Thank you.
Allora,
The slideshow was not
esta
running,
no la he visto, no se vio esta.
so you
No,
didn't see
te
this.
quedaste en la organización y después
We
no
were
han
talking
corrido las
about
siguientes
the
diapositivas,
creation
pero tenemos
of
tiempo,
the
no hay
command
problema.
forces
Podemos
KUFA,
retomar.
and now we're
Empezamos
talking
desde
about the characteristics of the command forces, and now we are talking about human resource and logistics
¿Y cuántas
and
personas
the
están
figures. How
empleadas
many
en
people
estas
are
actividades?
employed in these
Como
activities?
puedes ver aquí,
As you can
están
see,
más de
we have
8.000
more than
personas encargadas.
8,000
Por la mayoría son
persons that
militares,
are in charge. Many of
7.000
them are from the army.
personas
More than 7,000 are
y están también más de
militaries, and we have more than 1,000 or almost
Eso se llama el
1,100
mantenimiento concreto de las
operators. We
actividades.
call them OT or OTI, which are in charge of protected areas.
Estas actividades de protección
These
del
are
medio
the
ambiente se componen
activities
de
of
4
environmental
actividades
protection, and
principales porque
we
dicho
have
eso
4 main
están
activities.
4 mandos
Here you see 4 different
bajo de la dirección de
commands
4
under
generales.
the direction of 4 generals.
Por primera vez está como
First, we have the Protection Command, Forestry and National Parks. We have the Protection of Biodiversity, and we have the Energy and Environmental Security Command. Let's begin with the first one, the Police Command for Forestry and Park Protection. As you can see, the functions are many, but the two main ones are the protection of the environment and of nature in all its different expressions. Can be flora, fauna, landscapes, national parks, state parks, and on the other hand, also contamination, sanctions, and prevention of forest fires. As mentioned before, the specialty of this command is capillarity. And how can this take place? With the creation of this nucleus. The forestry nucleus is the main unit and is the main core of such command because it allows direct contact with the air forces and with the citizen authorities. In these activities, we have more than 5,000 or almost 5,600 soldiers covering the national territory. Together with the capillary structure that we've seen in some of the units that are providing support to the territorial activities, we can also refer to the different specialties within the special areas. First, we have the information nucleus against forest fires. These activities of this specific nucleus, it's mainly prevention and fight against forest fires, also capacity building at a national level and abroad, and is a point of reference in the investigation against forest fires. For instance, here we see some pictures of activities that we have undertaken in Chile on prevention of forest fires. Another specialized unit is this Metromont service. This is mainly monitoring of avalanches or of snow slides or risks of mudslides or any other avalanche that may take place in our mountain area. Basically, here we have 48 different itinerary nucleus for monitoring. We have 142 meteor surveillance traditional stations and also automated meteor surveillance stations. Basically, they're working in all the different seasons, especially during the winter season. We also have the nucleus of environmental and agro-food police investigation unit, and it also includes forestry. This is specialized in illegal trafficking of different hazardous waste, urbanistic abuses, animal abuse, forest fires, water contamination, atmosphere contamination, illegal hunting, and food fraud. We have different commands. The other one is the Police Command for Protection to Biodiversity. We have several tasks. Under this command, we can divide them into big subcategories. On one hand, we have scientific activities and of direct preservation of nature. And on the other hand, we have activities to protect wildlife. This command, as we mentioned, it has two main categories of duties, and that's why it's divided in two departments or regroups, as we call them in Italy. First regroup is diversity, or responsible for protection of biodiversity and wildlife. Therefore, it's a scientific body. Here we can mention protection of biodiversity. We can mention protection of natural reserves that are directly managed by staff of this command force. We do direct management on protected areas as well. We have the protection of the environment and of biodiversity, which also refers to wildlife protection. This can be done in these national centers of police forces for biodiversity, which is benchmark at a national level as well as internationally to collect data on the different outbursts of different or propagation of forest fires and their trends. Let's talk also about the biodiversity and why it's important. Here we have a bank of germplasm, forest germplasms. It's almost a collection of 2,000 million seeds and 220 tree and bush species to protect endangered species on plants and bushes and as well as trees. Here we have also activities of scientific research. We work together with schools and we divulge and communicate this information to citizens. The second group under the command of biodiversity is the CITES group. What are the activities under this CITES group? First, as the name mentions, CITES is responsible of CITES Convention and to understand international trade and protect natural species, protected species, wood. So it's also competent in educational activities, fight against hunting, intelligence collection, and of international crimes. The third one, the first command, is in charge of agro-food. The main tasks are the fight against any type of food shortcoming, which means protecting the consumer and supervising the proper use of the subventions granted by the EU under the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species and Wildlife. Or wild flora and fauna. Here, the main activities are the origin denomination or the denomination classification, and the fourth and last one of these commands under PUFA is the protection of the environment and energy security. The important task that has been allotted is to fight contamination, pollution, on environmental degradation, and also illegal trafficking of toxic or hazardous materials, mainly radioactive materials that might be trafficked through the national territory. These are the intervention areas. Again, contamination, the cement cycle of residues, and renewable energy. There's an office responsible of these activities at a very high level, and they have direct contact with the investigations and with the district prosecution office or anti-mafia for complex investigation. Which are the outcomes of all of our activities that have been conducted? As we have mentioned, on one side, we have scientific activities, and on the other hand, we have policing activities. Let's talk about scientific activities. We have more than 30,000 participants in our education initiatives. More than 80,000 are certified in the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, CITES. Also, we've undertaken more than 9,000 different controls during 2024, and the total of penalties or sanctions that have been interposed are 40 million of euros. This is almost $47 million collected in fees for penalties and sanctions. This is just an example of the figures and the outcomes throughout the year. It's very important also to mention international cooperation as well as the activities that we undertake in the different summits abroad or the different conferences where we participate. Excuse me, I think we've lost audio.
Tu audio, Daniele, creo que ha ocurrido algún problema con el audio. No se te está escuchando.
Ahora me sientes.
Ahora sí se escucha. Muchas gracias.
Perfecto.
We can hear you loud and clear. Audio is back. Talking about international cooperation, the presence of motivated staff with a high level of specialization has enabled the PUFA and the Italian police forces of becoming a benchmark at an international level for environmental protection. Here you can see an extensive list of international organizations that are now working jointly with CUFA in activities abroad. European Commission, UNESCO, G4, Interpol, and here we can see other activities. And I would like to focus, I'm sorry, the slide, it's not running. We are looking at the international cooperation slide, general elements for UFA command. Here we have cooperation with the United Nations. Sorry, we are not seeing the slide. Maybe you can put the right slide. Yeah, talking about international cooperation, I would like to talk about the green forests. We all know the blue hats of UN, which is a peacekeeping operation, blue helmets.
Y no están pasando las diapositivas.
Sorry, we have an issue with your slides. It seems that we have an issue with the presentation. We're not hearing or seeing the slideshow.
Is being recorded.
Okay. Juan Carlos. ¿Me escuchas?
Sí, ahora sí.
Can you
Sí.
hear me? Yes.
¿Dónde nos perdimos?
En cooperación
Where were we?
internacional estabas en los cascos
International
verdes.
cooperation. You
Perfecto.
were talking about green
Como le
helmets.
digo, los cascos verdes estamos
Green
para
helmets,
concluir. Los cascos verdes nos
to conclude,
conocemos los cascos azules, que es un
no
servicio de
blue
fuerza de
helmets,
paz,
a service
de
of
de
peace
fuerza de paz,
forces,
los peacekeepers. Así también la ONU
peacekeepers,
quería
and the
crear una
UN
especie de protectores ambientales
wanted to
que se llamarán
create
cascos verde.
the green
Y
helmets,
CUFA hace parte de
and CUFA
este
is
proyecto.
a part of
Al
this
final, la
project.
última slide es una
And
slide que
the
habla
last
del Centro de
slide
Excelencia para la
talks
Protección
about
del
the
Medio
Center of
Ambiente,
Excellence
que
for
es un
Protection of the
lugar
Environment,
internacional donde se
which
pueden
is an
formar
international place where
oficiales de
you can
las
train
Fuerzas Armadas de
officers
todo el
from
mundo
all the
y
armed
dirigentes
forces throughout the world
empleados,
and
por ejemplo, en los ministerios
leaders
del medio ambiente de todo el mundo. Y es un
of the
punto de
environment
encuentro, de desarrollo,
of
es
the
un
entire
lugar
world,
para
and
compartir
it's
conocimiento
a point to share knowledge.
cada día más, cada año más,
And
está volviendo a ser un punto de referencia
every year
internacional en
it's
la
becoming
formación
an
de
international
los
point
oficiales
of
y de los
reference
dirigentes
in
en todo el
training
mundo.
of
Al final
officers
de nuestro debate,
throughout the world.
me gustaría
At the end of
agradecerla
our
por su
debate, I
atención
would like to thank you
y
for
confío
your
que este
attention.
intercambio de ideas
And I trust that
fortalecerá
this
nuestra
exchange of
cooperación
ideas
y
will
nos
strengthen
permitirá
our
avanzar
cooperation
juntos
and
en la
will allow
protección
us
del medio
to
ambiente. Ha sido un
move
honor
forward
poder dirigirme
together
a
in
ustedes.
the protection of the environment. It's been an honor to address you.
Agradecemos la participación del capitán
We
Daniel Bufa
thank
del
the
Cuerpo de
participation of
Carabinieri de la
Captain
República
Daniel
de
Bufa
Italia,
of the Carabinier
que nos ha
body of
permitido
the
ampliar a
Republic of
los países
Italy
miembros de
that
la
has
Junta
allowed us
Interamericana de Defensa la
to
perspectiva
talk
internacional sobre las
about the
estrategias
international
y
perspectives on
capacidades aplicadas a la
strategies and
protección ambiental.
capacities applied to
Sexto
environmental
conferencista,
protection. The
República del
sixth
Perú.
speaker,
Es
the
un honor
Republic of
presentar
Peru.
al
It's an honor
coronel
to
José
present
Luis
Colonel
Rodríguez González del
José Luis
Ejército del
Rodríguez
Perú,
González from the
actual
Peruvian Army.
subdirector de planeamiento del
He is the
Comando de
Deputy
Operaciones
Director of
Terrestres.
Planning of
Ha
the
sido
Land
profesor asistente del Colegio
Operations
Interamericano
Command.
de
He has been
Defensa y
Assistant
comandante de la
Professor
Fuerza
of the
Especial Conjunta
Inter-American
del
Defense College,
Comando de
and
Inteligencia y
he
Operaciones
has been a
Especiales.
part of the
Es
command
doctor en políticas
of
públicas y gestión del
special
Estado
operations. He
y
is a
posee 4
PhD in
grados de
public
maestría
policies
en
and
áreas
has
vinculadas a la
4
defensa,
master
las
degrees in
relaciones
areas related to
internacionales y la
defense,
gestión
international
estratégica.
relations, and
Su
strategic
ponencia
management.
se titula
His
Operaciones
presentation
del
is
Ejército del
called
Perú contra
Army
la minería ilegal.
Operations Against
Coronel
Illegal
José
Mining
Luis
in Peru.
Rodríguez González,
Coronel
lo
José
escuchamos.
Luis Rodríguez González, the floor is yours. Thank you for this brilliant introduction. I would like to start by thanking the Inter-American Defense Board for this important effort to manage important knowledge regarding environmental protection. Can you see my screen?
Se está viendo tu imagen, José Luis. No se está viendo la
We
presentación.
can see you, but not the presentation.
Excelente. Ahora necesitamos que lo coloques en modo
Now
presentación.
we want to see presentation
Muy bien.
mode.
Ahora sí se ve muy bien. Adelante. Muy
Great.
amable. Gracias.
Please go ahead. I would like to thank you for this introduction. It's an honor to give my presentation for this distinguished audience in this important symposium. I will talk about the land operations and the experience of the Patas Unified Command in the northern part of Peru regarding the fight against illegal mining in the context of environmental protection, and I will give some strategic contributions to improve our work at a regional level. This is going to be my agenda for the day. Introduction, strategic framework, operations and actions, results of COPAS, challenges and lessons learned, and projections and regional contributions. In terms of introduction, I will introduce how the Peruvian Army has worked and the armed forces and what is the PATAS command, and I will talk about the problem. Our army, aware of the role being performed in our nation, Peru, have made an important transition. We had infantry brigades, and now we have infantry brigades with a focus on protection of the Amazonia throughout our borders. In front of Ecuador, Brazil, we have 6 brigades of protection to the Amazonia. The first one has been working in Bawa, border with Ecuador, and the second one in the region of Madre Dios. These brigades were created with a purpose to fight drug trafficking, illegal mining, and illegal lodging for transnational threats. But I will not talk about these brigades. I will talk about the Unified Command, PATAS, which is in the blue box in the mountain range and the wild in the La Libertad region. On May 8th, this PATAS command was activated. CUPAS, we can see on the left our president with the political authorities showing a serious commitment to protect the environment. Strategic, operational, tactical, and political level. And this is for you to see the area where this command works. It's a very slopey area that creates difficulties to fight this significant threat. I will define the problem. This is a very complex problem. It's a problem that demands attention from security. This is the social dimension, economic, political, environmental, and technological dimension. I will name some important points for you to understand the problem. There is negativity of illegal miners to get into the formal sector, and this constitutes a social pressure over our government, but our government has been showing a commitment with the principle of authority. It's related to the financing of third parties, mainly transnational actors, to launder assets. As a part of the problem, there is a presence of organized crime, which is transnational, Tren de Aragua and other plants that have significance in the region, coming from Venezuela and others from other countries that I will not mention because of considerations, problems of corruption, licensing, permits, even to have AR-15 arms, and other problems of contamination of water and soils and alterations in the territory. And I will mention that if I can summarize this, is that all of these factors constitute a severe degradation of the ecosystem due to illegal mining and transnational organized crime that affect the environment. This is according to the source of the Ministry of the Environment of Peru. Now I will talk about the second point, the strategic framework. Peru has activated the PATAS Unified Command, this joint task force, where we have all the partners that can contribute to protect the environment. We can see this in the red box. And we can see on the screen how our operational commands are focused on the threats that we may have. And this PUPAS command works under our operational Northern Command. It works in coordination with the Intelligence Command and Special Joint Operations, and every commander that can help at the state level to face the problems that I have mentioned before. It's necessary to point out that our country has public policies, state policies, national, multisectoral, and government policies. If we can mention something, it's a great progress to have these policies that include the armed forces. And this enable us to intervene. And in terms of armed forces, we can start to visualize our role supported by the highest level of the state. So we have a national agreement, and the ninth policy is this national security policy, and 19th policy is a protection to the environment. And we have multi-sectoral policies for security and defense, where we are focusing on the protection of the environment. The policy at the government level, Axis 6, includes fight against drug trafficking and terrorism, mainly transnational and environmental crimes. As you can see, we have a very robust framework that shows the progress in political terms of our state. I would like to focus on these three policies as our speaker said, Mrs. Arnasa, countries must have state policies, and we have policy 9 and policy 19. It's accepted by the entire political sector, but we have a multi-sectoral policy that constitutes support in terms of budget so that we can attack the problem from the environmental perspective with an important category for our head of state. The legal framework for CUPAS, the Unified Command, and I will say that this Unified Command was created, then it was defined. We defined hostile groups because this is an interrelated problem. Illegal mining, drug trafficking, and now we fight them as criminal organizations, and we have to have legal rules of engagement. We dictated exceptional measures against illegal mining and related crimes, which is a significant legal support for the operations that I will show later on. And there was a decree for actions against organized transnational crime and environmental protections, and this is relevant in the CUPAS model that is helping us for other regions of the country. It's necessary to say that our armed forces have well-defined strategic roles, and role 3 is related to environmental protection. I will talk about operations and actions. I will say that if we analyze this mission, I had the experience of being in BRAE, the Special Command of Valleys and Rivers, the area of the terrorists. We have some remaining terrorists, and we could include some partners in unified operations, multi-sectoral operations. But this mission, I wanted to show it because it reflects the military work, but also police work, and of all partners that can contribute in the solution of this problem, and that seeks to reestablish the principle of authority, control internal order, and promote social and economic growth as an idea to manage change in the province of Patás in northern Peru. Also, I will talk about the 6 objectives of CUPAS: identifying, arrest leaders and members, and we have made a lot of progress. B, seize arms and explosive use for illegal mining. And third, seizing minerals and inputs. Fourth, destruction of mines and illegal mining. The pictures are real of what we have been doing in May 2025. BE is intervention and closing of illegal arms camps. And the strategic goal is the population. This is the organization of CUPAS. We know very well the land component, the air component, special operations, and police. But as a part of this unified command and frame within the legal framework, we have the superintendents, national superintendents, SUNAP, for taxes, the environmental prosecution, the superintendents for arms control, immigration, the regional government, the environmental authorities, the regional government of the northern part of Peru, the local government, the private sector, and especially the public defense. As you can see, it has strong ingredients of different authorities that are significantly contributing to the results that I will mention. This is our strategy, and the red is the effort line of the other entities. I won't focus in the military part. I will say that in the intervention phase, we have the action of the public ministry and the judicial branch to detect and open cases, files for the key leaders of these criminal organizations and the national superintendents SUNAP to control chemical inputs and the Ministry of the Environment to detect contamination focus. And in consolidation, how the police has established points of control, the Ministry of Development produces and the Ministry of Agriculture, they promote employment programs so that we can make a transition from illegal economy to an economy that causes development. And the Ministry of Education providing educational activities in the population. Let's remember that here we can detect that big part of the population align with what Sori Martuchelli talked about, the transgression culture that we have in Latin America, and in the normalization phase, we can detect the intention is that the entities of the state work normally under the principle of authority and in a safe environment, that the regional governments can reactivate the municipal services, and that the ministries, that they can develop mining projects, agricultural projects, and the legal production chains, and also the Ministry of the Environment can implement environmental and conservation remediation programs, and so that when the armed forces are retreat, these programs are still strong, and that there is a local development model, and that public-private investments continue. This is the integration of the Unified Command PATAS. This is the best strategic model that the state has chosen to create sustainable peace that avoids cultural and physical violence. So we work with the public ministry, armed forces, mining ministry, agriculture ministry, and all the programs of the state, and the Ministry of Education, so that we can solve the problem. Now, I'm going to talk about the results of PATAS. I would like to talk about what Ban Ki-moon mentioned. Why are we fighting like this? Because saving the planet, getting people out of poverty, moving it forward in economic growth is the same struggle. And this is a guiding thought so that we can continue to fight for the people and to protect the environment. These are some of the real results of the last months, operations that are quantified to unify efforts and how these efforts contribute to the state. It's one of the arguments how security and defense can require more investment if they can bring results. And these are the results: ammunitions, guns, and ammunitions for people doing illegal activities were arms seized by PATAS. We also have some operations for key leaders in the operation Yamauma, detection and neutralization of mining areas, seizing of explosives and arms. The results, this is work that materializes an effort and a clear position of the Peruvian state.
En estos 3 meses se han realizado
In these
1.770 patrullajes de
3
control
months,
territorial.
we've had
operaciones de interdicción y
1,770 patrollings of
cumplir los
territorial
objetivos
control,
del Comando Unificado de
12
Patadas.
interdiction operations and 23 intervention operations, and the achievements are in this amount of soles. What are the challenges? Because we can see some results, and what are the lessons learned in CUPAS? To the left, we can see that the challenge is always to achieve a balance between economic growth, development of human capabilities, and sustainability in terms of the environment. I want to quote Dr. Reyes about her arguments in illicit economies. We can have results, but we have to act in the understanding that the illicit economies are promoted by key transnational actors. Marta Sen mentioned that we have to see and focus on efforts for human security. In 94, she said that people have the right to live without fear, with dignity, without violence, and they have the right to have a dignified job, but the state has to help so that CUPAS materializes not only expelling illegal mining, but to have conditions that make this territorial control sustainable so that illicit economies do not occupy this space. This is the real challenge. And the lessons learned, unity and efforts as a essential part of the model, especially when we have complex threats that are severely affecting the environment, territorial control that is sustained and accompanied by development alternatives such as the Unified Command CUPAS and the political and legal support for the efficacy and legitimacy of these actions. These 3 points, I highlight them. They are necessary to achieve results in the face of these complex threats. And finally, regional projections. This model, we can implement it in other parts of Peru and in the other nations, Andean sister nations, but we have to adapt it to the strategic and operational environments that they have in these places. It's a good model that is being studied and that should be studied by other countries so that they can share the model and work under the guidelines that I will mention in the next slide. Our community, Andean community, has excellent regulations to create more cooperation work. We have Decision 774, decisions on Andean policy against mining, because this creates a base for coordinated actions. And we are not employing that because if we read the 13 strategic forms of the plan, we are still not incorporating fully these decisions and policies. We have the Cartagena Agreement that legitimizes the work for protection of natural resources, Decision 727, that gives support to sub-regional cooperation programs, and Decision 523, which is the regional strategy for biodiversity for Andean tropical countries. This is a part of the joint strategy. So I would like to give my final thought. These decisions and regulations should be part of the solutions when we have an environmental problem and where there is illegal mining. And the authors who move illegal transnational crime, we can, as Ana Covarrubia said, we can overcome only regional focuses, and we can have better results in the context of protection to the environment.
Quisiera
And
terminar
just to
señalando la
remember
idea de que
Portuguese, I
la
would
vida
like
now
to
ha competizado,
say that a vida now
cooperazado,
competizado.
como lo dice Barton. Muchas gracias.
Cooperazado. Thank
Quedo a
you.
sus órdenes desde Perú
And
para cualquier requerimiento de información
I am
o
here
para
for
crear
whatever
y aportar
information you
a la
need or
cooperación
to
regional
create
y
and
hemisférica.
contribute to
Muchísimas gracias.
regional and hemisphere cooperation. Thank you.
Expresamos nuestra gratitud al coronel Ejército del
Thank
Perú, José Luis
Colonel.
Rodríguez González, por compartir la experiencia de cómo el Perú
Thank you for sharing
lucha contra la
the
minería
experience
ilegal.
of how
Su
Peru
ponencia nos
fights
ha
illegal mining.
permitido dimensionar la magnitud de este problema y
We
resalta el
can
rol de las Fuerzas Armadas
see the
en la
magnitude
defensa
of
del
the problem,
territorio
and
y
it
la protección
highlights the
ambiental.
role of the armed forces in the defense of the
Séptimo
territory
conferencista,
and the environment. Seventh conference,
Colegio Interamericano de Defensa.
International Inter-American
Presentamos al
College of
teniente
Defense.
navío
We have
Alfonso Flores
Lieutenant
Rojas de la Armada de
Alfonso
México,
Flores Rojas from the
actual
Mexican
subjefe de la
Army. He
División
is
de
the
Investigación
deputy
del Colegio
head of
Interamericano de
the
Defensa y
Division of
miembro del núcleo
Investigation
académico
of the
básico de CESDAP.
Inter-American College of
Ha
Defense.
ejercido como jefe
He has
estudios de
worked
posgrado en
as
el
a head
CESDAP,
of
recibiendo
postgraduate
reconocimientos por su
studies in
contribución al sistema
FOSA,
educativo naval mexicano.
and
Con
he has
información
contributed to
avanzada
the
en
naval
seguridad pública,
system of
políticas
Mexico.
públicas,
He has
historia y
degree
estudios
studies
internacionales,
in
además de una
international
destacada
studies,
trayectoria
history,
en
and
la administración marítima.
a trajectory in
Su ponencia
maritime
lleva por título
administration.
Integración de la seguridad
His
ambiental
presentation is
en la
integration of environmental
y
security in
seguridad
the defense
hemisférica.
agenda
Teniente
and
navío
security of the
Alfonso Flores
hemisphere.
Rojas,
Lieutenant Alfonso Rojas, the floor is yours.
Muchas gracias. Agradezco mucho la introducción.
Thank you
A
for the
continuación voy a
introduction.
proceder a compartir la
I
presentación.
will share my presentation.
¿Podrían confirmarme si la están viendo?
Can you
Se ve,
confirm
pero ahora sí se ve muy bien. Adelante, por favor. Muy amable, gracias.
Muchas
if
gracias
you
a
see?
ustedes. Bueno, muy buenos días. Como siempre es un placer colaborar aquí con los
Good
esfuerzos
morning.
en materia
It's
de
a
seguridad y defensa
pleasure to
en el
contribute
amplia
in these
definición de defensa
endeavors in the
hemisférica que la
defense
Junta
of the
Interamericana
hemisphere
tiene para
that the
todos los países
Inter-American
miembros y
Defense
todos
Board
aquellos que
has
nos
for
visitan desde
our
alguna otra parte
member
del mundo.
states. And
Primero que
welcome
nada,
to
quiero
those of you visiting us from different
aclarar
parts
que
of
esta
the
es una
world.
perspectiva
First and
teórica,
foremost, I want to say this is
por
a
lo que se
theoretic perspective
considera los procesos de seguridad y
considered
defensa
from the
hemisférico
defense
por
and
su
security
conjunto
procedures of
que
our
es
hemisphere,
multidimensional
the
de las Américas.
multidimensional
¿Por
security
qué
of
les
the
interesa el
Americas.
tema de seguridad y
Why
defensa
is the
en el siglo
environment a
XXI, ya
topic of
entrados en la
strategic national defense in the
mitad de esta segunda
21st
década del
century,
siglo?
in the
Bueno,
half
primero que
of
nada
this
es importante mencionar que la protección del medio
century?
ambiente se ha
Well,
convertido en un tema
this
central en
environmental
todas las
protection is
agendas
a
de
core
seguridad y
issue
defensa
in all the
por los daños
agendas of national
ambientales,
security for
ya
the
que esto únicamente
environmental
se limita a
damages
cuestiones
caused. This
públicas
is not
o
only
de desarrollo
about public
sostenible, sino
health
que
or
tiene
sustainable
implicaciones
development.
directas
This also
inclusive en la
has
estabilidad de los estados
other
nacionales
implications, even
y por
even
lo
at a
tanto en la
security
seguridad
state level
internacional.
and also in
De esto
international
podemos
levels.
mencionar y destacar a su
Therefore,
atención
we can mention and highlight
tres
its function, and
dimensiones
we can mention
mediante
three
las cuales
dimensions
podemos destacar esta
with which we
importancia
can
del
highlight
medio
the
ambiente
importance
en
of the
nuestra temática,
environment
bueno,
in
del día de hoy.
our
Primero que nada, en
topic
cuanto
of
a la seguridad
today.
nacional y los recursos
First,
estratégicos,
regarding strategic
es importante
resources and
mencionar que la
national
degradación del medio
security, it's
ambiente puede generar
important to
crisis de
mention that the
abastecimiento, ya sea
degradation
de
of the
cultivos y
environment
alimentos,
can cause
energía,
environmental
agua, y por lo
crisis,
tanto
energy,
provocar
water,
conflictos
food
sociales
crisis,
internos y
and
tensiones
internal
interestatales.
social
Un ejemplo
conflicts, as
de
well as
esto, la disputa
interstate
por recursos
conflict.
hídricos
For
transfronterizos
instance,
o
the
la
war against
sobreexplotación
water
pesquera que
or
pueden
the fishing
convertirse en detonadores
overexploitation
de
that might
inestabilidad
become
regional.
triggers of
Como
regional
segundo
instability.
elemento tenemos
As a second
las
element,
amenazas no
we have
tradicionales,
the non-traditional
las
threats.
cuales el cambio climático y los
Here,
desastres
climate
naturales
change,
intensificados
natural
presentan el
disasters
día
that
de
have
hoy
been
amenazas
identified
tanto a
are
infraestructuras
now threats
críticas
to critical
como a elementos
infrastructure
propios de
and
gobernabilidad y de seguridad nacional.
governance elements,
En
as
este
well
sentido,
as
la
citizen
Comisión de
safety.
Defensa de los Estados
So,
Nacionales
the
no
defense
solo
of
cree que
national
el día de hoy hay
territories
amenazas
not
militares
only
tradicionales, sino
currently
también riesgos derivados de
and not
este
only
medioambiental,
about
lo
traditional
que
threats, but
obliga a
also
la
about
movilización de las Fuerzas
the
Armadas para
different
operaciones de ayuda humanitaria,
mobilization of the Army
infradeportivas,
for
cuestiones
border
migratorias,
control,
ocasionadas por
migration
cambios
flow
climáticos
controls,
o protección de
climate
instalaciones
change control,
estratégicas
or
que
protection of
dependen o
strategic
que
facilities
interactúan
that
directamente con estos.
interact
Como
directly
tercera dimensión
with
tenemos el
this.
ámbito de
matters. We also have as a third dimension the geopolitics and strategies. From this standpoint, it's important to mention that environmental protection it's a topic of security and defense that has escalated at a global level and especially in the hemisphere. This component is responsible of ensuring stability of vital resources of people and states and to prevent non-traditional threats and a geopolicy defense of such resources. Regarding the aforementioned, the context of the 21st century for environmental protection derive or stem out from this concept. We want to first define non-traditional threats of multidimensional security, as well as the Millennium Development Goals. And it's important to mention these SDGs as well, the lack of food or any matters that directly affect the environment, its healthy development, and the healthy development of people. Continue with this evolution and for the region in the year 2003 with the declaration of the Americas multidimensional security. This is when we adopt such principles and the degradation of the environment evolved towards climate change. Next, we have the appearance of the Millennium Development Objectives. This framework sets forth the security of the environment in which the people can develop as a fundamental need to be able to achieve the continuity of human species. This evolved in 2015 with the 2030 Agenda, and now we have the well-known Sustainable Development Goals. Number 17 is pertaining to the environment. As a last element of the context of the 21st century for the environmental dimension, we have national policies. And here I give you some examples of what I mean by national policies. Regarding the global context, what causes the protection of the environment in the 21st century? Let's mention the Brundtland report called Our Future or Our Common Future in 1987. Here, for the first time in an international forum, these global policies are put in context and are discussed. Here, we are warned of the harms to the environment and how they can derive into conflicts because of the fight of these natural resources. Mentioning the water scarcity or the war on water, we also have the summit, the Earth Summit of Rio de Janeiro of 1992, and the 21st Century Agenda. Here we talk about human safety and human security, and here we incorporate the element of human safety in the international agenda. Then we have the Framework Convention of the UN on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement in 2015. The previous one was in 1992. Very importantly is this Paris Agreement of 2015. Here, it was established that climate change is an urgent matter for the world, and that affects the stability of each one of our states. Then we go to the report of the Secretary General of UN and the Security Council in 2009. Here, the environmental degradation was set forth as a priority. Then we have the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, specifically Objective 7 and 14, where we have climate action activities that are proposed. And then the life of land ecosystems. It's a sustainability element that will allow us to keep peace in the development of the human population. As a last element to highlight, we have the reports on climate change intergovernmental panel, IPCC. Here, these are basically translated into forced migration conflicts human conflicts in different parts of the world and how they are upscaling. From this context that I've just mentioned, out of the need of taking into account climate change and the environment and how this is important and vital part of the national defense for 2025, we have included these 5 great affectations of the environment at a global level. First, we have accelerated climate change. Here we can refer to natural storms, hurricanes that have affected the American continent, the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, and the Pacific area, droughts, forest fires. I'm sure you all are very aware of the crisis we face in California in the United States, as well as in different regions of Chile, that have caused unsurmountable losses of biodiversity, forced internal migrations, and humanitarian aid costs that are very high for countries. These elements have required the participation of the armed forces for civil protection as well as on disaster aid. The second is water scarcity and desertification. This has increased social conflicts because the overexploitation of basins, of watersheds, and the lack of water, and the consequences it brings about for human life and for the socioeconomic activities for countries and the region. This also will end up in risks and different issues in border crossings, and this has been already established in different policies at a global level, at a global scale, and threat that can cause immense losses, as we see in the North Africa region, on the loss of biodiversity and the overexploitation of resources. Then we have contamination and wastes, plastics and chemicals. This especially refers to the maritime as the Southern Atlantic, the Caribbean, Eastern Pacific coast. The contamination has really affected economically, and there's flagship cases that the lack of regulation have caused these issues, and the overexploitation of fishing is also very extreme in these zones. In the case of the Americas, the coast guards have destined the safekeeping of the different exclusive economic zones as a measure to stop these activities that, as I repeat, these are these are directly affecting the environment, not only in the Americas, but in the world. As a fourth point, I'm sorry, the fifth point is pollution and waste, plastic and chemical waste. As you can see in the image, the waste and the contamination is affecting the health of the populations at a worldwide level. Under these circumstances, I would like to introduce some statistics. Here, at a global level, we have surveyed different populations regarding if environmental protection is an important issue in their countries and the percentage levels. Again, it's important to have this information as representative of our states. With good data, we can generate best practices to tackle these situations. In the case of an analysis that was presented on March 2025, until March of 2025, we have in Latin America the biggest concern of countries as Brazil and Mexico with regards to environment protection. Here we can highlight within the emerging policies of these nations, we see 46% is the highest. In the hemisphere, how the need comes about or the concern to adequate environmental protection in the activities of national defense. Here we see the Democratic Charter, the Inter-American Democratic Charter of the OAS of the year 2000. We have some elements of democracy, and it highlights the importance to face non-traditional threats, including environmental threats and natural disasters, meaning that as of the appearance of this Inter-American Democratic Chart, we already had the environment in the map to start with governance and governability actions. The OAS Declaration on Security of the Americas, Mexico 2003, already states that security is not only regarding traditional threats or facing traditional threats or economic threats, but it's a construct of different needs that human beings will face to guarantee their subsistence and development. Therefore, an environment is already considered an essential element of these practices in matters of security and defense in the Americas. The declarations of the different summits in the Americas, there we can see it in another slide. All of these declarations are as part of the resolutions or human declarations. There's highlighted need of the American continent and how to protect its vital protected areas. In the case of the Amazons, of course, not only at a continental level should be protected, but also at a global level. Also, the conferences of the parties or the COPs are also important, and they highlight specificities and protection of the environment. And many countries of the region have been also host nations of this type of meetings, as you can see in the images. The World Health Organization as well oversees the rights that people have to guarantee the right to health, not only from a healthy perspective, but the right to access health. This is considered as necessary to guarantee this right. This is also within the scheme of defense, the defense scheme of the Inter-American Defense Board. Also, the South American Defense Board established as a main element when it was entered into force as a main concern for their defense policies to consider the environment. And this is not only on the condition of a state, but also the need to be well prepared, well trained, and do capacity building to be able to attend such emergencies, continuing with this logic of the current state of affairs and where the need of placing the environment as a core topic in the defense of the hemisphere. We have the Inter-American System of Security and Defense. And there are many other bodies or institutions that are now joining this priority. There are elements of study where we can go deeper to have some draft policies or draft proposals that we can also bring to our countries and also to establish cooperations amongst the countries within the Americas. This is the map of the different host nations where the inter-American meetings have taken place in the Americas. These are all host nations. Well, what are the main incidents at a regional level connected to security, defense, and the environment? We have the following. First and foremost, climate change and extreme events or extreme phenomenon. As I mentioned before, we have the constant presence of hurricanes and tropical storms in the two oceans that surround the Americas. These have been appearing more often and with more strength. It's important to be prepared to support our populations, but also invite us to generate ports and resilient cities, as well as to establish preparedness plans and action plans, not only at a national level, but at an international level. For example, in the Caribbean region, which is highly affected and impacted by natural disasters, to be able to support them, to have government mechanisms in place to cooperate, to provide solutions in case of such phenomena. Water scarcity and water or tensions caused by water resources. We have here, for instance, the water treatment done in Rio Bravo, in the border between Mexico and the United States, how these countries shared risks, so they should tackle risks together. And topics such as water scarcity, water shortage are threat multipliers. And we also have the maritime contamination and the non-documented and non-regulated illegal fishing. deforestation, degradation of strategic ecosystems. Here, again, we mentioned the Amazons, where the Brazilians already mentioned the main threats and the actions undertaken. This is considered not only as a frame of reference, but also a place to be protected. Also, climate migration and human security. In the case of the Caribbean and Central America, they've lost many of their agricultural land. Due to this lack of farming capability, they are obliged to migrate elsewhere where they can produce their food. This, in many occasions, have obliged states to combine their border patrol or the border migration policies with this humanitarian security. Regarding the climate change, this is considered a main threat in the OAS system. Let's continue with the critical infrastructure and energy security effects. We can mention that the increase of extreme phenomena is threatening pipelines, gas pipes, oil pipes, exploitation of mineral resources, as well as the structure and functioning of the existing companies to generate energy, energy resources, as well as redistribution of water. Also, attacks or sabotage in a scenario of environmental crisis are factors that can also foster further crisis. Regarding these circumstances in the region, here we have some interesting questions from a survey that was conducted. Here we have the subregion of Latin America, as well as if Latin America is well prepared for a green and clean future, and the performance of Latin America regarding clean energies. Here we have some answers to these questions. For instance, green energy in Latin America. There you can see the countries that are pioneer and one of the main innovators of green energy in the region. Paraguay is an example, as well as Brazil. Doesn't mean that the rest of countries are not contributing or are not involved in such green activities. As you can see, the figures are pretty promising, which means that we have good practices that we should harness. But the rest of threatened activities, it's also important to continue including them in order to foster green energy. Regarding national cases and how these emergencies are being tackled in the different countries of the region, especially, and this is the title of this presentation, how this topic has been embedded in our security and defense policies. And this is just an example. We don't have time to cover them all, but this is important to see how the hemisphere activity has grown and how actions have been pretty effective in the subject matter. For instance, in the United States, from the National Defense Strategy 2014, it acknowledged climate change as a threat multiplying agent. Also, USAID and its support on global environmental projects, it's or was key when they were supporting the capacity building for climate change mitigation and also to develop projects that favor climate change and environmental protection in the region, and especially in the Americas, as well as defense policies, a strong, secure, engaged. This is in the case of Canada. There's this document that I recommend that you all read, the Policy Strong, Secure, Engaged 2017. They set forth environmental protection as a main pillar of their national security strategy. And climate change, especially in the northern part of our continent, they do a lot of operations of search and rescue in the Arctic region, as well as surveillance of emerging maritime routes due to the ice melting. Brazil, we have the southern Amazonia region as main area to be protected, and actions being undertaken there by the National Defense Police and the Defense National Strategy, including the Blue Amazonia region as a strategic space. operations as Ágata, Verde Brasil, Guardianas del Bioma, or Biomass Guardians are operations against illegal mining, clandestine tree cutting, and resource trafficking, illegal logging as well. Also, the armed forces in Colombia are constantly doing activities against deforestation, against illegal mining, as well as the intersectoriality or the cross-cutting element on their public environmental policies that armed forces are also jointly executing with the rest of their army. This is in the case of Colombia. Mexico, we have the map of the protected natural areas and the Ramsar sites. Mexico, from its national security law, recognizes natural disasters and environmental emergencies as security threats. This is at a national and state level, and we follow this law. The National Maritime Authority and the Army in Mexico protects economic exclusive zones against illicit activities towards the environment and conducts regular surveillance on the maritime environmental surveillance. Also, we have the Sedena plan and the SEMAR plan that exists as of 60 years now. These are plans to help the population in case of natural disasters and support to the civil population. And also we have reforestation campaigns, biodiversity protection, and environmental and maritime education. The environmental authorities in Mexico have been in charge of safeguarding the civilians as well as the natural resources. And regarding a joint issue shared by Chile, Peru, Ecuador, and Argentina, we have the Galapagos area, the maritime reserve shared amongst these countries. They share this environmental issue in jurisdictional open waters in the southern part. Amongst them, they undertaken defense policies and strategies for environmental protection, especially against the illegal fishing or non-regulated illegal fishing. It's very important regarding also the different multinational exercises and the regional cooperation mechanisms or Orion operation that was undertaken amongst these countries. The main challenges in the region that derive from the global concerns in environment and that is related to national defense. Well, strategic issues or challenges from our academia and our board, we see the need of a strengthened regional cooperation, consolidating capacity building in a joint manner, standardizing protocols and multinational operations on environmental protection. This is very important to have coordinated cooperation and not only do them in an isolated manner. We need protection regarding environmental matters because we are a region that shares geographic spaces, so we need to tackle the issue together. Also, it's important to mention the perspective of the militarization risk versus the resilience need. There is, of course, a international press or mediatic perception that showcase bad perception on the environmental agenda. Why is it perceived as fake news or bad press? Is because there are many armed forces involved in activities in favor of environmental protection and a risk of over-militarizing the environmental agenda. Since these are permanent institutions in each one of our national states, the participation will be needed for emergency protection and strategic zones where there's difficult access, meaning there's no substitution of civil authorities. It's more a civil call that, or
emergencias o de riesgos
to
que
call
generales
on
en materia
police
social,
forces
¿verdad?
that can
Por lo
help
cual es
on
importante
environmental
que
matters to reinforce what's
una
already done.
resiliencia de todas
Therefore,
las
it's important to
líderes de
have
la sociedad, de los países
resilience
contemporáneos, con
and
la finalidad
to
de no tener
attend
la
such
necesidad
matters
de
in
llamar
contemporary
constantemente a
states.
las Fuerzas Armadas para,
Maybe we
sobre todo
shouldn't
en
rely
regiones
so
pequeñas
much
y donde están
on the
con pocas
need
capacidades a
of
cambio
calling
de fuerzas
the armed
civiles y no
forces
militares para la solución de ese tipo
or
de
the
controversias.
civic military
Y
forces
finalmente,
for
la cuestión de
such
la
type
estrategia
of
de
emergencies.
soberanía,
And
importante
as a
destacar,
last point,
no somos
strategic
los únicos,
resource
pero
management and sovereignty.
consideramos que es
Again,
incluso
we're
más
not the only
relevante.
ones, but we consider these are
Tenemos
maybe the most
el
relevant
control
resources.
de
The
las respectivas
control
soberanías
on the
nacionales
sovereignties
de las
of
regiones como el Amazonas,
territories such
el
as the
Ártico, las zonas
Amazons,
económicas
the
exclusivas del
Arctic,
Atlántico
and
Pacífico en
the
específico, y
exclusive
sector Caribe,
economic
son
zones
el
in the
verdadero reto
Atlantic and the
geopolítico
Pacific
que tiene el
represent a
hemisferio
true
americano. Por lo
geopolitical
tanto,
challenge in the
nuevamente,
American
es
hemisphere.
vigente aquella
Therefore,
frase
it is
aclamada de
still
los filósofos
current
griegos y
that
del pensamiento estoico,
phrase
donde
on
dice
the
que
hemispheric defense
los problemas
that says
emergentes
that the
nos
hemispheric
exigen
problems
soluciones
demand
hemisféricas en este
hemispheric
continente africano.
solutions in our
A
American
manera de
continent.
conclusión,
To
importante
conclude,
destacar para con
it's
ustedes que el medio
important to
ambiente
highlight
es
that
el
the
eje central de la
environment
seguridad,
is the main
es un
axis
eje
of
central de la seguridad del
is
siglo
a
XXI. Las Fuerzas
one of the
Armadas
main axes
necesariamente son
of
actores
security in the
estratégicos en las
21st
Américas
century.
por
The
la
armed
razón que he
forces
expuesto,
are
y tenemos la
strategic
necesidad de
environmental
fortalecer la cooperación
stakeholders in the Americas. We
organizacional,
have the need to strengthen
ya sea a través de
cooperation
mecanismos de la
and
OEA, los
regional
acuerdos
governance
bilaterales
through
existentes y
mechanisms
los
such
foros
as
como
the
la Organización
OEAs,
Interamericana de
such
Defensa.
as the
Desde la
Inter-American Defense
participación
Board, and
final que tiene la mina anterior,
bilateral
importante
agreements.
destacar que
And
una
it's
política de
important to
defensa y
highlight there must be a
sostenibilidad
balance between
es
defense and
un elemento
sustainability, which
importante
equals
en
our
políticas
resilient
para los
pathway
estados
towards
nacionales contemporáneos en
stable
el continente africano,
ecosystems and
lo cual nos
societies
puede
in our
llevar
American
a
continent.
significar como
This
objetivo
could
final una
help us
resiliencia de los
seek
sistemas y sociedades
resilience
en
on
las
our
Américas.
ecosystems and better
Como elemento final,
communities
quisiera
and
destacar para con
societies
ustedes
within
que
the
el medio ambiente
Americas.
el día de
As
hoy
the
es un
last
tema
point, I
periférico
would like to
y
say
central en la seguridad
that
del siglo XXI,
the environmental
establece
topic
la
is
lógica
not
de la
a
creación de este
secondary
escenario
topic, but a core
que por
topic in the
parte del siglo
security of
XXI
the
el reto
21st century.
estratégico
Also, in the
geoestratégico
21st century, the
es tan
strategic
importante
challenge
como el
in the
equilibrio
Americas
entre
is
la
to
respuesta
find
militar
the
a emergencias
point of
militares y la
balance
necesaria
to
política
respond
sostenibles
to
lideradas por
emergencies
la
from a
asistencia civil
military
en el siglo
standpoint
de la
and
resiliencia.
to
Y
promote
finalmente,
sustainable
destacar para con
policies
ustedes que considero
led
la defensa
by
hemisférica del
civil
futuro se va a llevar no
organizations or
solo
by
por
the
la
civil or
capacidad
the
de
CSOs.
disuasión militar,
Also,
sino también por la
security and
habilidad de
hemispheric
los
defense
estados
is the
de este
future,
continente para proteger
and
sus
they
ecosistemas, la
will
seguridad
include
y asegurar la
the
resiliencia de sus
use of
sociedades.
military forces to
Dejo para con ustedes
safeguard
las respectivas
societies. And
bibliografías
here are
y pues por
some
nuestra parte aprovecho
references that you can
solicitar el
also
favor
verify. And again, we
de
would
este
like
Instituto de
to
Investigaciones
express our
Estratégicas de la
gratitude
Ciudadanía.
to the
Muchas gracias.
Inter-American Defense Board from the Mexican High Studies Institute.
Al
Thank you
teniente
so
navío
much.
Alfonso Flores
Thank
Rojas por
you,
su brillante
Lieutenant
exposición,
Alfonso
que nos recuerda
Rojas.
que la protección
He
del medio
reminds
ambiente
us
no
that
es
the
un tema
protection of
aislado,
the environment is not an isolated
sino un
topic,
factor
but
central
a
en la defensa y la
core
seguridad de nuestras
factor in the
naciones,
defense of our
incorporando
nation.
la
So thank you,
dimensión
Lieutenant.
ambiental
It's very
en las
important to
políticas de defensa,
incorporate the
constituye un paso
environmental
esencial para
element in
fortalecer
the
la
defense of our
resiliencia
nations to
y
increase
la estabilidad
resilience
regional.
and regional stability.
Octavo conferencista,
Eighth
Junta
spokesperson
Interamericana de Defensa.
from the Inter-American
Finalmente,
Defense Board.
presentamos al coronel
Finally, we
Fuerza Aérea
present
del Perú,
Colonel of the Air Forces
Joel
of
Díaz
Peru,
Salinas,
Joel Diaz Salinas,
especialista en ingeniería espacial,
specialist on space
percepción remota y
engineering,
sistemas de información
remote
geográfica.
perception, and
Es
geographic
maestro en
reference
doctrina y
systems. He is a
administración
teacher in
aeroespacial,
doctrine and
licenciado
aerospatial
en administración
systems.
aeroespacial
He
y ha sido
has a
docente e
degree in
investigador en la Agencia
airspace
Espacial de
systems,
Perú
and
y en la
also he's
Dirección de Vigilancia y
been chair
Reconocimiento
of
Aéreo.
the surveillance and
Actualmente
air
forma parte
recommence
del gabinete de
operations. He's
asesores de la
part of the
presidencia del Consejo
advisor
de
board
Delegados
and
de la Junta
chairmanship
Interamericana
of
de
the
Defensa.
Inter-American
Su
Defense
ponencia se
Board.
titula
His
Posibilidades de
presentation
las fuerzas
is
armadas
possibilities of
para el
armed
empleo de
forces
la
for
percepción
the
remota
employment of the
en la
remote
protección del medio
perception in
ambiente.
the protection of the
Coronel
environment.
Joel
So,
Díaz,
Colonel
le damos el uso del
Joel Diaz, the floor is yours.
Muchas gracias, mi coronel. Buenos días con todos. Quiero agradecer al
Good
liderazgo de la
morning.
Junta
I
Interamericana
would
de
like to
Defensa
thank the
y en
leadership of the
especial a
Inter-American
los
Defense
integrantes de la
Board
División de Cooperación en
and
Desastres de la
especially to
JIP
the members of the
por
Division
brindarme la
of
oportunidad de
foster cooperation from this entity to give me the opportunity to give this speech. We've had the opportunity to listen to the previous presentations and see how the armed forces of our countries participate actively in the protection of the environment, highlighting
y
their
sociedad en
importance
general.
for the population and
Asimismo,
society in
hemos
general.
escuchado el día de
Also,
hoy
we
que
have
nuestra región
listened
tiene
that
diferentes
our region
ecosistemas
has
y la
different
biodiversidad
ecosystems
se ve amenazada
whose
por actividades
biodiversity
ilegales
is
donde nuestras
threatened
Fuerzas
by illegal
Armadas
activities
tienen
where
ámbito
the
de
armed
acción.
forces have an area
El
of
tema que hoy
action.
tocaré es
The
posibilidades
topic
de las
that I will
Fuerzas
discuss today
Armadas
is possibility
ante el
of the armed
empleo de la
forces
percepción, para el
in the
empleo de la
face of
percepción
the
remota
for
en la
the
protección del
employment
medio
of
ambiente,
remote perception in the
para
protection
lo
of the
cual
environment.
daré una
For
pequeña
that,
introducción,
I will
tocaré
give a
temas como
short introduction. I will talk about
servicios e
limitations,
indicadores,
services, and
aplicaciones
indicators,
ambientales claves y algunas
key
conclusiones.
environmental applications, and some conclusions.
Primero que todo, debemos
First
saber
of all, we have
qué
to
es la
know
percepción remota.
what is remote perception
Remote sensing en inglés o sensoramiento remoto en
or
portugués.
remote sense.
Pero, ¿a qué nos referimos con percepción
What
remota?
do we mean
Y para
by
esto
remote
podemos definirla
sense? We
como
can define
obtener
it
información de un
as
objeto
obtaining
sin estar en
information
contacto físico
from
con
an
él.
object without being in
En este
physical
sentido,
contact
nuestros
with it.
ojos se
So our
convierten en
eyes
sensores remotos,
become remote
ya que podemos obtener
sensors
información de nuestro
because we can
entorno,
get
de lo que
information
podemos ver.
about our environment, what we
Asimismo,
can see,
las
and
cámaras de nuestros celulares
the
o
cameras
los
of our
sensores
cell phones or
empotrados o
the
montados en drones,
sensors
aviones
embedded in
o
drones,
satélites.
aircrafts, or satellites.
Históricamente, el
Historically,
conocimiento del terreno ha permitido al
the
hombre
knowledge of
ganar
the
guerras,
terrain has
curar
allowed men to
enfermedades,
win wars,
desarrollar
secure
poblaciones,
diseases,
entre otras
develop
cosas muy importantes,
populations, amongst other
demostrando
important
que quien
things,
conoce más del
showing
terreno
that those who
puede
know
obtener una
the
ventaja
area more
competitiva
can
respecto a su
have a
adversario.
competitive advantage with
El
respect to the
empleo
adversary.
adecuado de la percepción remota nos
Employing
brinda diferentes ventajas
remote
como
sensing
tener
give
una
us
amplia cobertura del terreno,
advantages such as having
la
a broad
repetición
coverage of the
frecuente de la
terrain,
recolección de
frequent
información del
repetition of the
terreno,
collection of
el acceso
information
a
of
zonas
the area,
remotas o lugares de
access
difícil acceso para
to
nuestro
remote
personal,
areas or areas of
así
difficult
como la
access for our
generación
staff,
de
and
series
also
temporales.
the generation of temporary
Hemos
series.
escuchado las exposiciones
We've
anteriores
listened to the previous
y creo yo que si no
presentations,
es en
and
todas,
I think that
en la gran
in
mayoría la
most
percepción
of them,
remota tiene un ámbito de
remote
acción muy
sensing
importante para
has
el logro
a very
de los
important
objetivos de
area of
cada una de
action
estas.
for the achievement of
Por
our
otro lado,
objectives.
la percepción
On the other
remota
hand,
permite
remote
detectar,
sensing allows to detect,
vigilar y actuar con rapidez frente a delitos
watch,
y
and
desastres
act
ambientales, para lo
rapidly
cual las
in
Fuerzas
case of
Armadas
environmental
aportan
incidents,
no solamente
and the
capacidad
armed
técnica,
forces
sino
contribute
también
with
capacidad
technical
operativa,
capacities, but
logística
also with
y seguridad
operational,
para convertir las
logistics, and
alertas
security
generadas
capacities
en acciones
to
en el
turn
terreno,
these generated
desarrollando
warnings into
capacidades para hacer
actions
frente a
on
las
the
amenazas
site,
que se presentan a
developing
nuestros
capacities to
estados.
face the threats presented to our states.
Por otro lado,
On the other
existen
hand,
diferentes sensores
there
que
are different
recolectan distintas
sensors
imágenes.
that collect different
Tenemos, por
imagery.
ejemplo, las imágenes
We
ópticas,
have optical
que son
images
las más empleadas en la
that
actualidad,
are the most widely employed
las
currently,
cuales en algunos casos
which
contienen
in
una
some
banda
cases
en el infrarrojo
contain
cercano,
a band in the
fundamental
close
para los
by
estudios de
infrared, which
de
is
la vegetación.
fundamental for
Sin embargo,
studying the
en
vegetal world.
algunos casos,
However,
olvidamos
in
esta
some
banda
cases, we
en las
don't
acciones y
consider this
operaciones
band
militares
in the
que
actions
ejecutamos
and
en
military
áreas boscosas.
operations that we execute in forest areas.
Tenemos también el radar de apertura
We also
sintética,
have the synthetic
conocido
opening
como SAR,
radar called
que puede
SAR
emplearse en diferentes tiempos
that can be
meteorológicos,
employed in
con
different
lluvia,
meteorological
sin lluvia, de día, de
climates,
noche,
with or
con
without
nubes y
rain,
sin
day or
ellas,
night, with or
ideal para
without
estudios en la
clouds,
selva donde
ideal
predominan
for
las nubes.
wild studies where we have a
El
lot of
sensor LIDAR,
clouds.
que nos
The
permite
LIDAR
obtener el relieve del terreno,
sensor, which allows us
cuantificar
to
biomasa
see,
e identificar
quantify
caminos e infraestructura
biomass and
oculta.
identify paths
Los
and
sensores térmicos,
hidden
que como por
infrastructure.
su propio nombre
Thermal
lo indica,
sensors,
nos brinda
as the
información
name says,
calorífica,
gives us
tales como focos de
heat
calor e
information
incendios.
such as points of heat and fire. These sensors, you can say that they are more employed currently through remote presence, but there are others that we could also use. Quickly, we can see what is the process that takes place when we start with the programming. It's a fundamental phase because here we will determine what are more important, temporary resolution, radiometric resolution, and the needs and objectives that we have so that we can determine what is the best sensor that we could use in an operation or action. Then we have the acquisition of images, processing of the images obtained, the validation on site through drones or patrols, and the different georeference reports that we may have. This will allow us to have different operations of interdiction, control, oversight, where we have operations on site. And also the evaluation of the impact of these actions from beginning to end, either through recover hectares or residents in illicit activities. What are the limitations that we see? Clouds, for example. The presence of clouds could be overcome with SAR radars or with temporary series. The high cost and the existing licenses can be overcome with a combination of private and public sources, and also with the employment of open source software. If we have false positives, we can overcome this through verification on site with drones or with our patrols. And something that is fundamental, and I would like to highlight, in the case there is a lack of technical capacities, it is required to develop and reinforce training in our armed forces in terms of remote sensing. And we can have alliances with universities or research centers at a national or international level. Services that can be given through remote sensing are diverse services, individually or combined with other technologies such as geographical information services. We can give services of processing advice and others. Those results would be thematic maps that give us substantial information about the activities threatening our ecosystems, land or sea ecosystems. What are the indicators that we can see? The hectares that we monitor and the hectares of avoided loss, warnings generated. If these warnings can generate control and oversight operations, and also sanctions and the equipment seized. Another indicator is that the response time from the moment we detected the illegal activity in a certain point until the point of the actions, control actions that we carry out. Reduction of fires, spills, illegal fishing in focalized areas, amongst others. With the images, we can do different applications for the environment. However, for this presentation, we are focusing on 6 activities such as deforestation and invasion of protected areas, mining and illegal logging, forestry fires, spills and contamination, illegal fishing, non-declared or non-regulated fishing, and disaster management.
En el caso de la deforestación e
In
invasión
the
de
case
áreas
of
protegidas,
deforestation and invasion of
muchos de
protected
nuestros
areas,
países
many
presentan
of our
bosques que son
countries
amenazados por la
present
deforestación,
forests that are
para
threatened
lo
by
cual las
deforestation,
imágenes nos sirven para
for which
cuantificar de manera
images help
sistemática
us
este fenómeno
systematically
y la
quantify this
dirección hacia
phenomenon
dónde se dirige,
and
teniendo
where they're going.
productos para el monitoreo
And
continuo
we
con
have
imágenes
products for
ópticas y de
continuous
radar de apertura
monitoring with
sintética,
radar and
alertas de
optical
apertura de
images,
trochas, mapas del
warnings
antes y
of
después de la
opening
pérdida de
of
cobertura,
areas,
pudiendo realizar la verificación
and
respectiva
we
con
can
patrullas y
verify
drones
with
con la finalidad de que se
patrols
realicen
and
operaciones
drones so
de
that
fiscalización.
there are oversight operations or monitoring
En la
operations.
presente imagen, en la
In
presente
this
diapositiva,
image,
se puede ver
in this slide, you can
una
see
imagen
an
donde
image
existe un área
where
boscosa
there
y
is a
luego se ha
forest
realizado un
area,
proceso
and then
mediante
there is a process
software de procesamiento digital de imágenes
through
para
digital
terminar con
processing
un
software
mapa
to
en el
determine
cual se
with a map
puede distinguir
where we can
áreas deforestadas, ya sea
see
porque son áreas urbanas
areas,
o son áreas
deforestation
de
areas
cultivos,
because of
entre
urban
otros.
areas, crops areas, amongst
Entonces,
others.
con esta metodología se
So with
puede
this
realizar
methodology, you
una
can
determinación sistemática de la
do a
deforestación.
systematic
Países como
determination of
Brasil lo
deforestation.
vienen
Countries such
desarrollando
as
ya hace
Brazil
algunos años.
have been doing it for years.
Hemos visto en exposiciones anteriores que una
We have
actividad
seen in previous
que crece
presentations
cada
that
vez
an
más es
activity
la
that
minería
is
ilegal,
growing increasingly
afectando
is
la
illegal
seguridad de
mining,
nuestros países.
affecting the security of our
Otra
countries.
actividad que amenaza al
And
medio
another
ambiente es
activity
la
that
tala
threatens
ilegal,
the environment is
siendo en este
illegal
caso
logging. In
que
this
las
case,
imágenes de alta resolución
the high
críticas para la
resolution images
identificación,
are
como
critical
podemos
for
ver en la
identification.
presente
As we
diapositiva,
can see in
donde
this
se
slide,
distingue y se puede
we can
cuantificar la
see
cantidad de
and
árboles
quantify the
existentes.
amount of trees that are there.
Con imágenes
With
se puede
images,
identificar
we
pozas,
can
dragas,
identify
campamentos y caminos
drilling
recién abiertos.
camps and newly
Asimismo, la
opened
contaminación existente
paths
como las
and
rutas
the existing
logísticas y
contaminations
puntos de
and
acopio
logistical
para
routes
poder
and
realizar la interdicción. En la presente imagen
collection
se puede
areas. In
distinguir
this image,
las
you can
áreas donde
see
existe la minería
the
ilegal
areas where there
y
is
elaborar un
illegal
mapa que
mining
las cuantifique
and
y
create
señale
a
la
map that
dirección de
quantifies
dicha
them and
actividad.
points out the direction
Esta
of this activity.
información es muy importante
This
para la
information
ejecución
is
de
important
acciones
for
por parte de nuestros
execution
gobiernos
of
como
actions
parte de la protección del
carried
medio
out by
ambiente.
our government as a part of the protection of the environment.
En el caso de los incendios
In the
forestales,
case of
las imágenes nos permiten
forest
detectar focos de
fires, the
calor,
images detect
estimación de áreas
heat
quemadas,
points,
rutas
estimation of
seguras
burnt
y
areas,
priorización de
safe
brigadas.
routes, and prioritization of
Actualmente muchos de nuestros
brigades.
países ya
In
vienen
many of
inclusive
our countries,
realizando
they are
alertas para evitar incendios forestales, tal
giving
como lo hace
warnings
también
for forest
nuestro querido país
fires,
de Brasil.
as in Brazil.
En el caso de
In
derrames,
the case of
pesca
spills,
ilegal, no declarada y no
illegal
reglamentada,
and non-declared and
las
non-regulated
imágenes
fishing,
y especialmente
the
del
images,
sensor radar de apertura sintética
especially of the
nos ayudan a
synthetic
detectar manchas de
radar
hidrocarburos y
images, they allow us
embarcaciones,
to detect the
así como la
hydrocarbon
generación de alertas operativas a
stains and the
guardacostas
generation of
y
operational
coordinación interagencial.
warnings to coast
En
guards
esta
and
imagen
interagency
se puede
cooperation. In this
verificar
image, we can
cómo se
check
pudo identificar las manchas de
how
petróleo
they
ocasionadas
could
por el derrame
identify
producido en las
oil
costas de Lima
stains by the
en el año
spill that
2022.
happened in the Lima coasts in 2022.
Por otro lado, como se puede apreciar,
On the other
se
hand,
puede
as we can
identificar
see,
también
we
áreas o
can
zonas donde se realizan actividades
identify
de pesca ilegal,
areas where there are illegal fishing
que si
activities.
esta identificación se
If
realizase de
this
una manera
identification
sistemática,
would be
podría
systematically
incrementarse
done,
las operaciones de
we
patrullaje,
could
de control,
increase
de
patrolling
fiscalización y
operations
negación de
and
actividades
monitoring
ilegales en nuestros océanos.
operations in our seas.
En el caso de la gestión de
In the
desastres,
case
existen
of
múltiples aplicaciones.
disaster management, there are multiple
Dentro de
applications
la estimación, prevención,
within the
prevención del
estimation,
riesgo y
prevention, risk
mitigación de los
prevention, and
desastres, ya
mitigation
sea por
of disasters,
inundaciones, sismos,
either by
movimientos
flood,
PEGMASAS, entre
earthquakes,
otros.
mass movements,
Quizás
etc.
esta aplicación
Perhaps
sea de las más
this
empleadas por
application
nuestras Fuerzas
is one of
Armadas,
the most
donde han
used by our
cumplido,
armed
cumplen
forces,
y cumplirán una
where
labor muy
they
importante para el bienestar de nuestras sociedades.
have
Un
or
caso
they
particular
do very
es cómo
important
en
things.
diferentes países se dan actividades de
In different
transferencia del
countries, there are
conocimiento
activities, transfer knowledge activities,
y a su vez también el co-desarrollo de
and
servicios con
the
actores
co-development of
locales,
services with
ya sea
local
a través
actors,
de actividades
either
conocidas como hackathon
through
o en algunos casos
activities
como mapatón
called
en los diferentes países de
Mapaton
Latinoamérica,
in the different
los
countries
cuales
of
sirven como una
Latin
oportunidad de
America
aprendizaje y
that
desarrollo para
give
nuestras
us
Fuerzas
an
Armadas.
opportunity to learn and develop our
Y
armed
nuevamente recalco
forces. And
y
I
resalto la
would like
necesidad de
to
incrementar las
highlight the
actividades de
need to
capacitación en
increase
percepción remota
training
y procesamiento digital
activities
de imágenes en nuestras
in
Fuerzas Armadas,
remote
considerando que la
sensing,
inteligencia artificial nos
considering
brinda un
that
campo de
artificial
acción importante
intelligence
para el
gives
logro de
us
nuestros
a
objetivos.
field of action that is very important to achieve our goals.
Por otro lado,
On the other hand,
existen diferentes instituciones en
there
nuestra
are
región
different
que
institutions
cumplen
in
una
our
función
region
muy importante en la protección del
that
medio ambiente,
do a very important
como es el
job in the
CENSIPAN en
protection of the
Brasil,
environment, such as
la
CENSIPAM
Dirección de
in
Vigilancia
Brazil,
Amazónica y
the
Nacional de la Fuerza Aérea de Perú,
Amazonian Surveillance
el
Directorate
Servicio
of Peru,
Aerofotogramétrico de la Fuerza Aérea de
the
Chile, la Agencia Espacial de Argentina
Chilean
y la Agencia
Service,
Espacial de
the
Perú,
Space
entre otras,
Agency of Argentina, and the
que no
Space
solo procesan y
Agency from
generan
Peru,
información a través de la percepción
process
remota,
and generate information
sino que
through
sirven como
remote
plataformas
sensing,
de cooperación y
but help
desarrollo de
as
capacidades
cooperation
conjuntas,
platforms and
pudiendo
for
favorecer
development of
nuestro
joint
quehacer
capacities,
diario en la protección del medio
favoring
ambiente.
our
Es
activities in the
necesario,
protection of the
en este
environment.
caso, que exista una mayor cooperación e
In case there
integración de
is more
nuestras
cooperation
instituciones
and
en
integration of
favor de
our
las poblaciones.
institutions in favor of populations.
Finalmente, como conclusiones,
And the
podemos
conclusions,
señalar que
we can
existen
say
muchas posibilidades de
that there
acción
are
para
many
la protección del medio
possibilities of
ambiente
action for
dentro de
protection
nuestras
of the
Fuerzas Armadas,
environment within our
siendo
armed
crítico que
forces.
nuestras instituciones la
And it is
empleen de
critical that
manera
our
sistemática
institutions employ it
para los intereses de nuestra
systematically
región y de nuestros
for the
países.
interests of our region and our
Por otro
countries.
lado, es
On
preciso
the
la
other hand,
implementación de los recursos
we
necesarios para,
must
para
implement
el
the
procesamiento de
necessary
imágenes,
resources
tales
for
como softwares y
image
hardwares que
processing, such
permitan
as
cumplir de manera
software and
eficiente
hardware that
la
allow
misión que se nos
to
encomienda.
fulfill the
Un
mission
punto fundamental
entrusted to
para
us.
lograrlo
A
es la
fundamental point
capacitación,
to achieve
siendo
that is training.
importante
It
entrar
is
más a fondo en el procesamiento digital de
important
imágenes,
to
ya sea por métodos
study
automáticos o semiautomáticos, empleando también
image
la inteligencia artificial,
processing with
la cual nos brinda muchas
automatic
oportunidades de
means,
desarrollo.
and AI give us a lot of
Para esto es
development
necesario ejecutar
opportunities,
acciones
and
de
for this we
colaboración
have to
e
have
integración entre nuestras
collaboration
instituciones,
activities and integration
así
activities within our
como, por
institutions,
ejemplo, con universidades o
such, for
centros de
example, with
investigación, tanto a nivel nacional
universities,
como
research
regional.
centers at a national and regional level.
Por último, y resaltando la
And
importancia del
lastly,
conocimiento
and
del
highlighting the
terreno
importance of
con herramientas como
knowledge
la
of the
percepción remota
terrain with
y como
tools such as
analogía,
remote sensing, and as an analogy,
quiero dejar
I want to
una frase de Sun Tzu,
leave
la
you
cual
with a
es: conoce a
sentence
tu
of Sun
enemigo y
Tzu:
conócete a ti mismo
know your
y
enemy,
saldrás
know
triunfador en mil
yourself,
batallas.
and you will defeat in
Es todo, mi
many
coronel. Muchas gracias.
battles.
Nuestro
Thank you.
reconocimiento al coronel
Our
Fuerza Aérea del
recognition to
Perú, Joel
Colonel
Díaz
from
Salina,
the Air Forces
quien ha
of
puesto
Peru,
de
Joel Díaz
relieve
Salina,
el valor de la
who has
percepción
highlighted
remota
the value of
como
remote
herramienta
sensing
estratégica.
as a
Gracias a sus
strategic
aportes
tool.
comprendemos cómo la
Thank
tecnología
you to
satelital
your
y los
contributions, and we
sistemas
understand
geoespaciales
how
fortalecen la capacidad de
satellite technology
vigilancia,
and geospatial
anticipación
systems
y
strengthen
respuesta
surveillance
frente a
capacity.
amenazas ambientales.
And
Conferencia
in
de la
view of
tercera conferencia de protección del clausura de la
disaster response,
tercera conferencia
and
de protección
this
del
is
medio
the
ambiente.
closing of the third conference on environmental protection.
Incluidas las ponencias programadas, corresponde
Concluded the presentations, we have to listen to the closing remarks by General Brigadier Mr. Eduardo Villegas Vilázquez, Vice President of the Council of Delegates of the Inter-American Defense Board, to whom we give the floor.
Distinguidos participantes y compañeros
Distinguished
presentes y en línea.
participants and colleagues,
Al llegar al cierre de
in
esta
person and
tercera
online,
conferencia de
in
protección
closing
del
this
medio
third
ambiente,
conference on
deseo
environmental
expresar
protection,
a
I
nombre
would
de la
like to
Junta
express,
Interamericana de
on
Defensa,
behalf of the
nuestro
Inter-American
más
Defense
sincero
Board,
agradecimiento
our
por la
sincere
valiosa presencia,
appreciation
las reflexiones
for
y los
your
aportes de
valuable
cada uno
presence,
de ustedes.
reflections, and contributions of
Especial
each of you.
agradecimiento se extiende a los
Special
ponentes
thanks.
de los Estados Unidos de América,
We want
Brasil,
to
Colombia,
greet our
Ecuador, Italia,
audience from the
Perú,
US,
del
Ecuador,
Colegio
Brazil,
Interamericano de
Italy,
Defensa
Peru, the
y de la propia
Inter-American
Junta
College
Interamericana
of
de
Defense,
Defensa,
and the
los
Inter-American
cuales
Defense
hicieron
Board,
posible esta
which
conferencia.
made this conference
Este espacio de
possible.
diálogo y de
This
intercambio de
space of
experiencias
dialogue and
ha
exchange of
confirmado que la
experiences
protección
has
del medio
confirmed
ambiente
that the
no
protection
es
of
solo
the
una
environment
responsabilidad
is not
individual,
only a
sino un
individual
deber
responsibility,
compartido que
but
trasciende
a shared
fronteras.
duty
La
that
riqueza de las
transcends
ponencias
borders.
que hemos
The
escuchado a
wealth
lo
of
largo de esta tercera
presentations that we
conferencia
have
fortalece
listened
nuestro
to
compromiso
in
de
these
trabajar
conferences
unidos
strengthen our
en favor de un
commitment to work
futuro más
together in
sostenible
favor
para
of a
nuestras
more
sociedades.
sustainable future for our
La
societies.
importancia de foros como
The
este
importance of
radica
forums
en que
like
nos
this
permiten conocer
lies in
la
that
magnitud de
it
los
allows us to
desafíos
know the
ambientales que
magnitude of the
enfrentamos, el
environmental
cambio
challenges that
climático,
we
desastres
face, climate
naturales,
change,
pérdida
natural
de la
disasters,
biodiversidad y
loss
la
of
escasez de recursos
biodiversity,
naturales,
and
entre
scarcity of
otros,
natural
y al mismo
resources, amongst
tiempo
others. And at the
identificar
same time,
oportunidades de cooperación
identify
regional y global
cooperation
para
opportunities that are
enfrentarlos de
regional and
manera
global
efectiva.
to face them
Hoy, más
effectively.
que nunca, la sociedad demanda de
Now more than
todos
ever,
acciones concretas
society
y decididas.
demands a concrete
La
and
seguridad
decisive
y el
actions from us.
bienestar de la humanidad
Security and the well-being
dependen
of
de la capacidad
humanity
de las
depend on the
instituciones para
capacity
integrar la
of the
dimensión
institutions
ambiental
to
en
integrate
todas
the
sus
environmental
tareas,
dimension
con
in
visión
all their
estratégica
tasks,
y con
with a
responsabilidad
strategic
ética.
vision and with ethical
Con la
responsibility,
confianza de que lo aquí
with the trust
compartido
that
será
what we
semilla de
have shared
nuestros
here
proyectos,
will be the
acuerdos
seed
y
of our
compromisos.
projects,
Reitero a
agreements, and
ustedes
commitments.
la
And I
intención de la
reiterate to
Junta
you the
Interamericana de
intention of
Defensa
the
de seguir
Inter-American
impulsando
Defense Board
iniciativas
to
que
continue to
fortalezcan la
promote
seguridad,
initiatives that
la paz
strengthen
y
security,
sostenibilidad de nuestro
peace,
hemisferio.
and
Muchas
sustainability of
gracias.
our hemisphere. Thank you very much.
Agradecemos las palabras de nuestro
We
general
thank the
brigadier
remarks
Eduardo
of
Villegas
General
Velázquez,
Brigadier Eduardo
vicepresidente
Villegas
del Consejo de
Velázquez, Vice
Delegados
President
de la
of the
Junta
Delegates
Interamericana de
Council of
Defensa,
the Inter-American Defense Board,
por su reflexión de clausura que reafirma la
for his
importancia de
reflections
trabajar juntos
that
en la
reaffirm the
protección del medio
importance of
ambiente como
working
un
together in the
componente
protection of the
esencial
environment
de
as
la
an
seguridad
essential
y el
component
desarrollo
of
hemisférico.
security
De
and
esta
hemisphere
manera,
development.
concluimos
And
la
so this is
tercera
how we
conferencia de medio
conclude
ambiente de
the
la Junta
third
Interamericana de Defensa.
environmental conference of
Expresamos
the
nuestro
Inter-American
reconocimiento a
Defense
todos
Board.
los
We
ponentes
express
por
our
la claridad y
recognition to
profundidad de
all
sus
the presenters
intervenciones
for
y a cada
clarity
uno
and
de los
depth of your
participantes por su
interventions and
activa
of
presencia en
each
este espacio de diálogo.
participant for
Estamos
your
convencidos de que
active
las ideas
participation in
compartidas
this
hoy
active space.
contribuirán a
The
fortalecer la
ideas
cooperación,
will
la innovación
contribute
y la
to
acción conjunta
strengthen
en beneficio de
cooperation,
nuestras
innovation,
sociedades
and joint
y de
actions
futuras
in the benefit
generaciones.
of our
Muchas
societies
gracias
and future
y los
generations. Thank
invitamos
you very
a
much.
nuestro
And
próximo
we
seminario de
invite
la
you to
Junta
our
Interamericana
next
de Defensa,
seminar of
el
the
Seminario Taller
Inter-American
de
Defense
Gestión de
Board, a
Armas, que
seminar
tiene como
of
tema
arms
las buenas
management that
prácticas y herramientas de apoyo
has
para la
as a
gestión de
title Good
armas y
Practices and
municiones.
Support
Muchas
Tools for
gracias.
Management of Arms and Ammunition. Thank you and good afternoon.
Recording stopped.